Good morning. Welcome to the December 4th, 2023 meeting of the Guilford County Board of Commissioners. Now, I know you're not...
Take that back, brother.
I'm sorry. Monday, December 4th, 2023. Durham.
You said Guilford.
Sorry. My apologies. I don't sit in this chair very much, so. In any way, obviously, I'm not the normal person you see speaking here. I'm here only for a brief moment. Today is a momentous occasion. The general statutes provide that annually the Board of County Commissioners will select a chair for the following year. And during that brief moment, as we collect the votes for that, the person who's sitting here, the county attorney, typically will lead that vote, and then I will immediately relinquish it to the chair for the vice chair vote. So just a little bit different than what we normally do for a moment, but thank you for your time and attention. So what the plan is, I'll ask for nominations for the chair vote, and then we will proceed taking a vote and go from there. So having said that, is there a nomination from the floor for the position of chair of the Durham County Commissioners?
Mr. Attorney, I'd like to nominate Nitha Alam for chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter. So Commissioner Nitha Alam has been nominated for chair, and we'll take a vote now so that we need a second for that nomination.
I'm not sure. I don't think we actually do for this, but I will second that.
Thank you. Forgive that procedure, but so we have a nomination and a second for chair, and the vote is for Commissioner Nitha Alam. So we'll take a voice vote, and we'll go by name so that we record it properly. Commissioner Alam.
Aye.
Commissioner Carter.
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobs.
Aye.
Commissioner Burns.
Uh-huh.
Commissioner Howerton. Okay, so that vote results in a vote in favor of Commissioner Nitha Alam by the majority of the Board of Commissioners. So Commissioner Alam, you can come now and you can take over the meeting to vote for vice chair.
Thank you so much, Attorney Andrews. Thank you, everyone. At this time now, I will open up the floor for nominations for the role of Vice Chair.
Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Burns for the role of Vice Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs. We have a nomination for Commissioner Burns for the role of Vice Chair. We will now take a roll call vote. Start with Commissioner Burns. Commissioner Jacobs.
Aye.
Commissioner Carter.
Aye.
Commissioner Howerton. And I am an aye. With that, we have unanimously voted to approve Commissioner Vice Chair Burns to be our next Vice Chair of this board. Congratulations. Okay. Commissioner Burns and Jacobs, if you'd like to switch seats or... Before I ask Vice Chair Burns if she has any comments, I'll read the public charge for the meeting. The Board of Commissioners asks its members and citizens to conduct themselves in a respectful, courteous manner, both with the board and fellow citizens, At any time, should any member of the board or any citizen fail to observe this public charge, the chair will ask the offending person to leave the meeting until the individual regains personal control. Should decorum fail to be restored, the chair will recess the meeting until such time that a genuine commitment to the public charge is observed. As a courtesy to others, please turn off your cell phones during the meeting. Vice Chair Burns, I would like to pass it along to you if you have any comments.
I have several comments, but I'll keep it brief because we do have an entire work session. I do see some of my family members here. I'm certainly thankful that you all were able to show up. I have never been one to go to be first. I want Durham to be its best. I think that we focus too much on being historic and first and not best. We are sitting at a pivotal time right now where gun violence is plaguing our community, and we have not been focused on that, not as a united board of three. I hope that with this election, we can stay focused on the task at hand, and that is protecting Durham's people, elevating Durham's people, and putting them first and foremost. I would also like to elevate the thought that meeting with all bodies in Durham is important. African Americans make up 36% of this county. There are elected officials who have refused to meet with people who look like me. The days of elected officials being silent about that issue ends today in my administration. There has been a lot of work put in over the years by myself and this board to elevate Black maternal health, to move forward with an economic development agenda that puts all people first, that makes sure that people in Durham get jobs first. We've worked to expand how we work with our agricultural community because we want to make sure that we're feeding our friends and our family food that is grown close to home. We're going to continue that. I want to make sure that as we go out into this community and we support our small businesses that have pivoted out of the pandemic, that we do so in a way that makes sure that they can continue to create jobs for people that work and live here. I look forward to working along with the school board to improve our matriculation rate because that's what our children deserve. I want folks to put public schools first. I want people to put people in Durham first. Durham is an industrial juggernaut. It is a southern city that is a beacon to the south. People are looking to us to do the right thing. This board has survived the way it has because we have decided to put this community first. Anyone in the audience who does not want to continue on with that same vision cannot work with this board, cannot work in this community. I am hopeful that under my administration, along with Commissioner Lom, that we can start to carve out a path that does not continue to leave people in Durham behind, that does not endeavor to be first, but endeavors to be best. I am hopeful that after today's meeting, we can step out and work with the other two boards, along with our business community and our nonprofit community, to close the gap that we've seen created by the chasm of the COVID-19 pandemic. I will end my comments here. Some people think that advice is a bad thing. You hate to love it, you love to hate it, you love to love it. I just look forward to becoming Durham's favorite new vice. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Burns. I have some comments myself to share. First and foremost, I have a few thank yous. Thank you to Chair Howerton and former Vice Chair Jacobs for your mentorship and support over these past 3 years. You've set a high bar for what it looks like to lead this board, and I'm thrilled to work with Vice Chair Burns to build on your example. I'd also like to thank the county staff, County Attorney Andrews, our county manager, Dr. Sowell, our board clerk, Monica Wallace, and every single person who works to make this chamber function smoothly. The 5 of us may be up here making votes, but the county only thrives because of our incredible team. It's not always glamorous work, it's not always in the spotlight, but it is absolutely vital to the strength of our community. Thank you to every staff member, from our classified staff to frontline staff up to management. Thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't thank my family, my mama and papa, my siblings and niece, Afreen, Arshin, Muhammad, Zain, and Rania, and of course, Tokir and my sweet baby girl, Alia. All of your support and unconditional love has given me the strength to serve. And I'd finally like to thank the people of Durham County for putting their trust in all of us. As chair, it will be my honor to reflect the values of this county to make life easier for everyday individuals and families. After all, this is not my board, this is not our board, it's the people's board. And that's what our call to service is all about. My journey to public service started nearly a decade ago. I was just an undergraduate student down the road at NC State when my best friends were killed in a brutal hate crime. Dia, Yusser, and Razan were funny, they were smart, they were driven, and they had big dreams and bright futures. And they never got a chance to fulfill them. They were stolen from us too early, right on the brink of the rest of their lives. From that day on, I made a commitment to carry on their legacy, to serve with their humility, kindness, and generosity of spirit, to make the world safe for every person who has ever been threatened because of who they are, what they believe, where they live, or who they love. And today feels like a milestone in that journey, because even amid a record rise in bigotry and hate, this board looked at this Muslim woman who has grown up in a post-9/11 America being called a terrorist, told to go back to where she came from, and y'all chose to call me chair. I think back to my parents coming to the United States to make a better life for my sisters and I. Growing up, they stretched every dollar to move us closer to the best schools. They gave back to their family overseas and served their neighbors in their own backyard at food pantries and the mosques. My parents taught me that I'm not living for this life, that each of us is placed on this earth to achieve our true purpose, to bring light to those around us and smooth the path for the next generation. And I can't even find the words to describe how grateful I am for everything they sacrificed to make it easier for me to reach my purpose. My parents and I are naturalized citizens, but they still live on the margins because of how we dress, how we look, how we pray, and they've always been aware of the target on our backs. But Mama and Papa, today that target is a badge of honor, because we aren't just part of this community, we can help lead it. And for the next year, that's exactly what this board will do. We'll continue the work that we've already started in the tradition of decades of amazing public servants here in Durham County and across the state, with respect for the people and for one another. We'll further our commitment to guaranteed basic income, tax relief and assistance, and elevating the voices of working class people. And together we'll join hands in the pursuit of our shared purpose, the dignity and integrity of every person in Durham County. Thank you. Thank you all. I would like to pass it to Chair Howard, Commissioner Howerton and Commissioner Jacobs if they have any comments, or Commissioner Carter as well.
Thank you. I still forget to turn the mic on. It's just been a pleasure and an honor to serve as the chair for the last 3 years. And the things that we've been able to accomplish for Durham County has been amazing. And due to the work that our staff has done, and our partners in the community, we got it done. And there's so much more to do. So what we did over the last 3 years and what there is to do going forward is just a sampling of what this community still needs. So I'm just honored to still be here serving this community, because it's about being a servant leader. and a servant leader, the work is not about me, it's really about the community. So it's been my honor and my privilege to serve as a chair for the last 3 years, and I look forward to continuing to serve this community. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would first just like to congratulate you, Chair Alam and Vice Chair Burns, in your new leadership roles on our board. And I'm really excited also for this board to model elevating younger women in leadership and supporting women in leadership. I'm really excited about the year ahead, and I look forward to supporting both of you in your new roles. I would also like to thank Commissioner Howerton for your leadership over the past 3 years of our historic all-female board and helping us through many transitions. It has been a pleasure to work with you as Vice Chair, and I've really enjoyed our partnership and teamwork together. I believe in the power of local government to make positive and progressive change so that people in our community can thrive and live well. This power is due to the collective force of our community, our staff, and our board working together to make these changes. And again, I look forward to our board, the community, and our staff working collaboratively and collectively to continue to move our community forward. Thank you.
Thank you for the chance to make a few remarks. I had not planned to do so. I'll start also by congratulating Vice Chair Burns and Chair Alam. I look forward to what I know is going to be a warm-spirited and strong leadership from both of you. I want to say how happy it makes me feel to look out and see family members and friends and colleagues and staff members and people who care deeply about Durham who are here today for this meeting, just a work session, but also where we elect leadership. Thanks for being here. This will be my 20th year as an elected servant in Durham, and it has been a gift to me to get to do this work for the past 19 years. I'm not seeking re-election. However, I am not retiring from the work. I look forward to another year of fighting for what we believe in Durham, fighting for our public schools. Our public schools across this country are definitely fighting for their lives. And so we have another year of that, fighting for all of the things that this board believes in, all of the things for which we have common shared values. And I am committed to that work for a whole nother year and look forward to giving it my all.
Thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate all your comments and congratulations. At this time, we'll move to citizen comments. I believe, Clerk Wallace, we only have one person signed up for citizen comments. Warren K. Langley is joining us virtually. If there's anyone who wanted to speak and hadn't had the opportunity to sign up, you can please come over to Monica over at the corner to speak with her. DeWarren, can you hear us? You are still muted, DeWarren, and you have 3 minutes for your public comment. Thank you.
DeWarren, you are still muted. DeWarren, please unmute yourself.
We can't hear you, dear.
We see your lips moving, but you still have the red mic next to your name on Zoom.
He said, I know.
Well, thank you so very much. First, I would like to start by congratulating Chair Alum as well as Vice Chair Burns on your election as Chair and Vice Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. Uh, I'm here to speak on behalf of the Charles Hamilton Houston Foundation, which provides a continuum of intense, strategy-centered, skill-based, and career-focused programs, services, and mentorship to facilitate academic, leadership, and professional development to prepare boys and young men of color for academic success in a competitive workforce. The absence of academic proficiency, coupled with high suspensions and delinquency referrals, correlates with juvenile delinquency for boys of color, often leading to adult justice involvement. To break this cycle, a critical emphasis on high-quality education, early career exposure, and workforce readiness is imperative. Your support for the Charles Hamilton Houston Foundation would be more than just financial assistance. It will fuel our mission to provide tailored academic leadership and professional development for boys of color in grades 6 through 12, as well as young men aged 18 to 25. By investing in their future, we cultivate confidence, hone skills, and facilitate the creation of personalized plans to pursue their dream careers. Together, we bridge opportunity and workforce readiness gaps, creating a pathway to expanded career opportunities and economic success. We prioritize tangible results and measurable outcomes that directly contribute to enhancing the educational and career prospect of boys and young men of color. We work with them by setting clear goals and targets, monitoring their progress, and working with them to adjust strategies to ensure desired outcomes are met. We measure the effectiveness of our programs, mentorships, and services to maximize positive impact on their success. Reflecting on my own personal journey, from struggling with reading to enduring teasing and questioning of my intelligence, I emphasize the importance of respecting sacrifices of volunteering in the community, but also the need to invest in community-based organizations that are on the front line of the work to ensure that all in our community are able to identify, develop, and reach their full potential in order to reap the benefit of the great renaissance that we're seeing economically in our community. We actively work to dismantle oppressive systems, but we also, while working to provide individual level interventions, know that in order for us to have long-term success, it requires system level change, which is why one of the things that we did in my term as chair of the board, the Durham County Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, was brought forth the recommendation for you all to increase that funding by $100,000. So I will be reaching out to each one of you to share about the work of the Charles Hamilton Houston Foundation, our programs and services, in hopes that you all will invest in the work that we do. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak, and I wish you a productive meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Langley, and thank you for your service to our community. With that, we don't have any other individuals signed up for public comment, so we will move to consent agenda, and I will pass it along to Manager Sewell.
Here we go. Okay. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. We will begin with agenda item 230808, Budget Ordinance Amendment Number 24BCC 00058, Public Health, to recognize $1,200 from the National Network of Public Health Institutes for the Racial Justice Competency Model RJCM Pilot Program. Agenda item 230809, Budget Ordinance Amendment Number 24BCC 00057, Public Health, to recognize $100,000 from the National Association of County and City Officials for COVID-19 Education and Access. 230832, approval of an interlocal agreement, ILA, with the City of Durham for a joint crisis communications plan with Durham County's share not to exceed $50,000.
Just one quick question, Dr. Sowell. We're putting this out for RFP. Is that what we're approving? I'm sorry, I didn't click on this one.
We will not be leading it, but I think the city is actually leading it. So I will ask ACM Brinson, do you know what the process will be for us to procure the plan?
Good morning. This is an item that we have talked about for a couple of months in light of all of the things that we cannot anticipate. Crisis management. We just had a situation next door last Monday, unfortunately, that would fall into this category. We feel it's important for us to plan together to be able to respond when we have these unfortunate incidences, and the city and the county have been working together to bring this forward, and my last understanding was that the city would be taking the lead, but we will share in the cost and we will review the RFP.
Well, no, I've always wanted us to have a crisis communication plan, so number one, that's not the issue, but when y'all do find out the answer on who is lead or if it is going to RFP, because a lot of times there are outside firms that do these.
Yes.
And so if we are going to send this one out and they're going to be lead, I'd just like to know when it was posted. That's
Absolutely. We will bring that to you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jacobs?
Yes. I was also really excited to see this and wondering also how I see Board Member Byers here with us today. I was wondering how the schools would also be involved with this because unfortunately, I know in the description there are many different purposes that this could be used for.
Absolutely.
And one of them is is related to the kind of lockdowns and gun violence that we've seen. So one of my questions was how will the schools be involved? And secondly, I'd be really curious what kind of system that we come up with, because I think a great model that we have, honestly, is Duke Energy with power outages. When you have a power outage, you have a lot of ways to report the outage, and then there is like a constant feedback loop that you're getting from Duke Energy with text messages. There's a map. You can go on and look and see where the work is being done. I think this is a really complicated issue of, number one, how people can report things, but also some type of centralized way that people can get updated information. I know this references a website, but I think how information is continually updated and then again gotten back to people. So I just want to say I think this is very important in how we do it with social media and what kind of platforms that we use. It's a great opportunity. So
thank you. All good points that you made, and certainly the work that we do will take advantage of best practices that are there, and we want to bring forward the best plan possible, the most up-to-date plan possible, using all the tools and techniques that are currently available to keep our community informed and be able to respond to whatever comes down the pike. And again, we'll be working with our emergency management professionals to bring that forward to you.
Okay, thank you.
There you are.
Hi, good morning, Commissioners. Congratulations, Chair, Vice Chair. I do have one comment to add. Emergency management is actually going to be leading the RFP process. So we serve as a city and county division. So there will be a lot of collaboration. We will be working very closely with the county teams as well as the city teams. This is a complicated process. There are many, many stakeholders, which is why we want to go about it in a very intentional manner. which is why we're getting an ILA and going through the process as we are. But we will be more than happy to keep you all informed as we make progress, as we select a particular company to assist us with this process.
Thank you. And I do want to repeat that please do include the schools as one of the key stakeholders. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And how we can partner with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions about this item? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Item 230845, approval of McKim and Creed contract amendment for the Utilities Division for ARC Flash Analysis Services in the amount of $10,748, bringing the contract amount from $94,807 to $105,555 with a not to exceed amount of $120,000. Okay, item 230851, budget ordinance amendment number 24BCC00034, public health, to recognize $59,743 from Guilford County's Division of Public Health for staff development and training. 230853, public health requests approval for fee schedule changes and a change in the charge master rate.
Commissioner Hamilton, your microphone.
Okay, I'll say it again. So would you have staff talk about the fee changes, because that kind of gets people a little bit uneasy when we start talking about fee changes.
Sure, I'll ask ACM Pierce to come up and explain that.
Good morning, Joanne Pierce, Assistant County Manager for Community Health and Wellbeing. Good morning to the board, to the manager, county attorney. Just want to share, each year public health looks at its fees and the schedule and make adjustments accordingly to follow guidelines, and it gets approved by the Board of Health, and then they present it to you. And certainly they look at to make sure it's affordable, but just adjust it slightly as required. And so this comes to you annually.
Me and this mic. What's the percentage of increase?
It depends on what the item is. It states in the agenda action form, is there a specific item you are seeking information about? Because it varies depending on what the service is.
And the overall percentage change is 3%.
Yes, the overall.
Overall is 3%.
If there's anything specific, I can get that for you.
No, just basically, I know that from the community's perspective, when we start talking about increases, they have a lot of questions about what is increasing and how much. So if there's any way we can break that down a little bit more.
Absolutely, and I will add, often the people who may come for our services, they fall on a sliding fee schedule, and oftentimes the fee is $0. So there's that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. We'll move now to 230854, approval of relocation of abandoned Emory Cemetery. 230870, approve alternate appointment to the 2023 Board of Equalization and Review. 230871, approval of contract with Woolpert Inc., DBA Data Cloud Solutions, in the amount of $88,175 for mobile assessor product to transition to appraisal field process to paperless environment. 230872, delegation of authority to the tax assessor to grant individual extensions for the listing of 2024 business personal property. 230882, Capital Project Amendment Number 24 CPA 00013, appropriating $600,000 of limited obligation bond funding (LOBS) for the new Emergency Operations Center (EOC) and Backup 911/Sheriff's Call Center Capital Project 4730 DC 158, and execution of contract for architectural design advanced planning services with O'Brien Atkins Associates for the EOC and Backup 911/Sheriff's Call Center project. Commissioner Jacobs.
Thank you, Manager Sewell. I know this is an issue that you and I have already communicated about, but I just wanted to raise it with the board, which is I hope that we can really get a grasp on why we have two separate 911 centers and get some type of assessment of, whether this is the most cost-effective and efficient way to deliver services to people in our community. It's one of these things where we keep moving forward with the same system, and now we're going to be spending money to do a backup for something that doesn't seem to make sense, at least to me. And so I would just hope that we'll be able to also take a look at that and see if we're going to try to move towards something integrated, can we start with the backup system? But anyway, obviously it's something that we need the staff to have the expertise to look at. But it just raises questions for me, and especially as we look at hopefully moving the HEART program countywide, which I know the sheriff does support. What would that look like? Because the way that HEART works is the first stage is for 911 operators to assess the calls and divert calls, even at that 911 level, to people who have mental health and expertise. So, again, I just hope that we'll kind of understand what we're doing here before we keep spending money on this. Thank you.
And I'll just briefly say that we have already had exploratory conversations with city leadership. But as you can imagine, this is a very complicated and integrative process, and so it will take us a while to even identify what steps we would need to take in order to consolidate services. But those are conversations that we are having.
Dr. Sewell, one, thank y'all for trying to make improvements to a system that many people in this community rely on, not just for their own public safety, but for their own health care requirements. So that's number one. I do think it's important not to put words in the mouths of other elected officials in their absence. So I do want to elevate that. Number three, I think it's important to also elevate that we have 911 centers in this community that have not met state standards for almost a year. So I'm happy that that doesn't reside here, from my understanding. It resides at the other body. So I'm happy that we're making these updates, because since I've sat in this chair, there have been numerous days where we have gotten reports, both from the media and from the public, where folks will call 911 and it has to go to Orange County or has to go to Wake. So I like the fact that we have a backup so that we don't continuously have these gaps. As someone who has had to call 911, I am blessed that I have not ever had to be rerouted, and that is because we've had a backup. And so I'm excited that we're moving forward with these improvements, and I do hope that other people will make improvements to their system so that the state will not once again come back and say, you have once again not met standards. I'm happy that we're meeting standards. So that's all I want to say about that.
And I know Dr. Sewell has mentioned that she has spoken with city. I've actually had a conversation with the sheriff about the fact that we have two, and he has expressed interest and support of the idea of exploring, because he also recognizes, and like his staff, the county side is fully staffed, the 911 call center. And so looking at how do we improve this service for all county residents, he's open to that conversation.
Great. All right. We'll move on now to 230885. recognition of a rebate in the amount of $49,950 from the Duke Energy NC Solar Rebate Program for the new Durham County Youth Home Project.
Yeah, I just wanted to say how great it is that Duke Energy has this incentive program, first of all, for putting solar, making our rooftops solar ready. And I'm so glad that the county is being aggressive and moving in this direction, putting more solar on our rooftops, and hope we'll continue to do so. It's great to see the timeline for how long it will take for this to pay for itself. And it's not that long. What was it? 9 years, 10 years? 6, okay, a little longer, but still, that's fantastic. Thanks so much, Perry and staff, for all the work on this.
Okay. All righty, then item 230901, approval of the 2024 Board of County Commissioners meeting schedule. Madam Chair?
I see, Manager Sewell, that there's notes about suspending the rules to approve this. I did have a question, though, if we could tentatively approve this, because I know we're still waiting on the schedule from the school board for our joint meetings with the school, as well as if there's any other changes or additions, but a tentative approval of the meeting till then.
Could we, well, instead of a tentative approval, can we just move the approval to the 11th? And the school board might be ready by then. Is that fair for everybody? Yeah.
I was actually going to make a comment on
go
that.
for it,
Yes, I was
sis.
going to ask. There was a type error in the manager's recommendation, so it will actually need to be approved at the 11th meeting because I am waiting on the 2 dates from the school board, which was February 13th and the August date. There was a conflict, so I'm waiting on additional dates from them,
Yeah,
and then
we got
I will
legislative.
hopefully, yes.
We have legislative that day. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. So, can I make a motion to pull that off the consent agenda? That way we can approve.
Well, we would keep it, and then it
We'll
would
move it to the 11th.
It will,
Okay.
it will move to the 11th with corrections, any corrections that's needed.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobs.
I just had one requested addition, Monica, which is that Monday, April 22nd, I believe, is Passover. And I'm not sure if that will conflict with our meeting or not, but if you could just double check that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So that would be the only correction or addition.
Is that the 11th or 12th?
I think it's April 22nd, 2024.
Any other comments on that one? Madam Chair, that concludes the consent agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Sewell. That moves us to our discussion items, starting.
Really quick before we move to discussion items. I've always liked to take the time to embarrass our staff whenever it's prudent. Happy birthday, Claudia.
Happy birthday.
Today is Claudia's birthday, everybody. So please, poke fun at her in the hallway, sing happy songs, do all the things, give her cupcakes. But yeah, happy birthday, Claudia. Somebody just did it.
Thank you, Vice Chair Burns. Happy birthday, Claudia. We'll start with our presentation on the RTP Social District, led by our Deputy County Manager, Maurice, and Amanda Ronan, Senior Director of Placemaking at RTP. And I see you have a guest with you. If you can also introduce yourself.
Hi, Linda Hall.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners, Manager Sowell, and Attorney Andrews. I'm Maurice Jones, Deputy County Manager for External Affairs. I'm pleased to be with you this morning to discuss two subjects related to the Research Triangle Park. A little bit later this morning, we'll discuss the future of all of the park and what it will entail to make that vision a reality. But first, we'll focus on the Research Triangle Foundation's request to implement a social district in what is known as the Hub, the location of RTF's headquarters, and a home to a new mixed-use development that will include not only office space, but 4 new multifamily residential complexes, a hotel, and retail spaces throughout. A social district allows people to purchase beer, wine, or cocktails from participating businesses and carry those drinks outside of one particular property and throughout a designated area. Last year, you may recall, the City of Durham created a social district called the Bullpen for pretty much all of downtown, citing the positive economic benefits of having such a district. Today, Ms. Ronan, Senior Director of Placemaking at RTF, is here to provide you with some background on RTF's interest in establishing a social district at the Hub. After her presentation, she'll take any questions that you may have and seek guidance from you as well. Ms. Ronan.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for having me today. Really appreciate being on the agenda. I'm Amanda Ronan, Senior Director of Placemaking for the Foundation, and I'm here today to talk to you about the future Hub RTP Social District. Oh, okay, got it. Moves fast. As many of us in this room are passionate about Hub, I'm sure this is not the first time you're hearing about it, so I won't dwell on these too long. But Hub RTP is a 100-acre site that sits in Durham County in the Research Triangle Park. The west side of the site right now is active with our tenants who are office, lab space, as well as Boxyard RTP. The next phase is a 44-acre Class A mixed-use center that is on the east side of the campus. It will encompass more office and lab space, residential units, retail, food, beverage, and a hotel. This space really will be the new downtown of RTP, and we are excited to have this opportunity to truly create community in the Research Triangle Park. This new development would not be possible without our collaboration partners. Of course, our funding partners. RTF is the master developer, but we have $20 million from Durham County, so we do appreciate that in helping us get this community built. We have $10 million from RTP companies and then $2 billion in private developers. Our office and retail is with White Point Partners out of Charlotte. We are calling that Horseshoe. Our residential partners are MAA, and that product is called Nixie. Our life science lab is through Longfellow, and we're calling that VIA. Our office towers will be with KDC, and our hotel is with Alamo Manhattan and Next Point, and it will be a Renaissance Marriott. One part that we are really proud of in this project is leaning into that P in the Research Triangle Park and having Bergens Creek Stormwater Meadow and 16 acres of green space that connect to our already existing trails. That's really one of the big drivers that has propelled us to want to apply for this social district, because we want people joining or coming to our site to really enjoy these amenities and be able to leave the four walls of a building and get outside. So I'm coming to you today asking for guidance and partnership in moving forward with getting a social district approved at the Hub site for the full 100 acres. As I will get to in future slides, we don't plan to have the full 100 acres be the social district to start externally. I want to go ahead for simplicity in terms of paperwork and everyone's time to go ahead and apply for the full 100 acres, but only externally allow a certain boundary on the east side of the campus. The hope would be eventually down the line to have the full 100 acres and incorporate Boxyard that's on the far west side, but to start we want to be prudent with our resources and be able to evaluate how things are going. So to start, this would be phase one. This is really centering around that Horseshoe, which is our retail food and beverage concept, our stream, and our amenities that include a stage, a public lawn, and a splash pad. Again, the idea is to get people out enjoying the beautiful nature that we have in North Carolina, collaborating, building that community outside of four walls. This is a zoomed-in view of what that actually looks like. Those blue signage markers, they would be the signage that we would have around the site to make sure people are not traveling to Highway 54. We would want to keep them contained on the site safely. Really building that community around the epicenter, which is B, F, I, and J, K being our stream. So actions taken to date, I have been meeting with Downtown Durham, Inc. to learn how the bullpen has been going, lessons learned, and things that they have changed. I've had an exploratory meeting with Maurice and Alan, and they've given me a path forward to today, so I really appreciate their counsel there. And then I've had a briefing with all of our current Boxyard RTP vendors, our current office tenants on the campus, and then the Research Triangle High School, just so they know what's coming, they feel comfortable, and everyone understands how this may or may not affect them. And then what's next? We still got a ways to go. Of course, this meeting is a huge step, but we are working with our marketing team now to make sure we have a robust landing page on hubrtp.org. Since social districts are very new to this region, it's important that the community is informed and understands what can and cannot go on there. So this hub landing page will include a map, a list of the businesses participating, rules and regulations, FAQ, contact information, and feedback. We're also working on a brand around the social district, so it is very prominent on that signage on our website. People notice it, see it, and understand that they are within the Hub RTP Social District. As we release more businesses that will be in Hub, we will be categorizing them into 3 buckets: order here, drinks welcome, not permitted, and that's following the bullpen, what they did in downtown Durham. And then finally, settling on projected hours of operation. Of course, we don't have all of our tenants announced yet, so once we do, these hours may fluctuate, but again, going off of what has been done in other social districts locally, projecting 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And happy to take any questions. Thank you all so much.
Vice Chair Burns?
It is on. One, thank y'all so much. I see that your president is here. How you doing, Scott? Good morning. I see you have a board member. Hello, Dr. Anita Brown-Graham. Welcome, as always, to our chambers. You answered one of my questions when you said that you had already had an initial conversation with the school. So I can kind of sort of mark that one off because I know it is like right across the street. There's actually a bus stop, the lights interchange where you have to slow and cannot cross for the kids. Yeah, I drive past that one every day. So I am happy to see that. On the construction piece, I know we're supposed to be talking about the social district. I did see that little caveat. Congratulations on hitting over 35% for your MWBE spend. But I did notice that there was an asterisk that was for construction, which is great. Would love to know in the future, if you can bring it back to us, what that looks like on the professional services side. Probably won't be as high, but we want to know because we probably got some folks that can do some architectural design, have some folks who can lend their ear to PR, so forth and so on. Did see the new website. I want to jump back. I know that Raleigh also has a social district now, and we have one. As far as you said, you've had preliminary conversations. I would like to know what is some of the feedback you've gotten, both negative and positive, and how can we help to massage or support any of those concerns or any of those, or support any of, or aid in giving any support for things that they think that they might need. I only throw this out. I remember when I first got on the board, Scott said they were going to do entertainment 4 nights a week, right? And I was like, how in the world are you going to do that during COVID? He said, I'm just going to get my bongo drums and a CD player, and we're going to make this thing. It's on video. So I remember when you said that. I always want a Hub RTP to be successful, bless you. And so I just want to know what it looks like because, you know, I think Meet and Graze doesn't serve alcohol, but there's alcohol that's already out there. So, you know, just the thought process across the campus. Mm-hmm. How do we feel? Because I'm pretty sure at Hub RTP there's going to be alcohol. At Boxyard, what is the feeling for this huge gap of a parking lot between? So just speak to that now. Let y'all go.
So that is part of the reason that we're going to focus on the east side to start is we really want to understand what it would look like for someone to travel potentially from Hub RTP to Boxyard and what that looks from a safety perspective, customer experience perspective. What are they doing during that walk? And we have some ideas, but we don't have them out yet, but we're really trying to evaluate that. From a standpoint of lessons learned from downtown Durham, they said one of the big issues going into it, or one of the perceived issues, was going to be safety and trash. They were worried that people would be getting drunk, acting unruly, bringing in outside alcohol, trashing local public places. And they just really hadn't seen that. They were prepared for it, which was great. They went and took the steps for it, but they were not seeing that. So we on our campus, we have employed Kane Security, and we have been so happy with them. They have been such a great force in our community, and we plan to have them on the hub site as well. So they will be there to help us kind of evaluate from that safety standpoint, because I think that's probably the biggest thing for me as well. Since we do have these public amenities, we want it to be safe, we want it to be clean, we want it to be a good experience, and I think they'll really help us aid that.
Quick follow-up. So that's the 100 acres is who's on the campus. I would be interested to know, and I don't usually ask the transit question, but I imagine that when this is approved and all of this is built, up the street about 1.5 miles, 2 miles, 3 miles will be Apple. Across the street is Fidelity, NetApp. There are all these other folks who are probably going to want to say, all right, it's after 5, I'm going to Hub RTP. How do we, the traffic pattern, even how are we having that conversation? The only reason why I ask, the 14,000 jobs that are about to be put on Davis Drive alone without a social district are going to be a problem. And now here's this nice, bright, shiny thing. So what kind of transit conversation? Because the only bus stop I can think of is the one that's right there in front of Box Yard. I don't think it's one at the corner. So any thoughts on that? And if you don't have them, it's fine.
Well, the next agenda item is RTP 3.0.
Okay.
And Scott will be up here as well as Travis Creighton, and we do have that on the forefront. Excuse me. But appreciate the question. We do plan on having transportation within Hub in the future, and they can address it probably more technically than we can. I would also like to address the question, which was a great question, on the high school being across the street.
Right.
We were, I think last time we were here, giving an update on Hub. I did report out that we do have Kane Security on site. We were finding that with just county sheriff service that we don't have city police or EMS.
Right.
That we had to subsidize that. So we've invested about $500,000, and also will invest privately through the association Hub's security. So we have definitely beefed up security in support of the safety of the entire 100 acres, but also just that the high school couldn't afford crossing guards, et cetera. So we have that taken care of as well.
Thank you, ma'am.
And congratulations, Chair and Vice Chair.
Thank you, Linda.
Commissioner Jacobs?
Well, thank you. I also want to clarify that this is something that our board will need to approve. According to state statute, it will be something that our board has to take up. So I'm just wondering, one of my questions is, what is your timeline of when you need us to take action on this?
Sure. So we would love for this to sync up with our opening of Horseshoe, which is projected for Q4 2024. So coming up quick. So I hope today, and maybe I can speak with Maurice after, any outstanding items that you need in order to make that decision, I'm happy to start gathering those.
Okay. And I'll just say I 100% support this. I think this is really important. We have social districts now all over the United States. If we are not doing this, then we are not staying competitive. We are not keeping up with what is happening in every city that is thriving. To your point, the rollout of the bullpen has actually been kind of it's really been a non-issue. It's been really seamless. And I will say, I have personally benefited from it. One night, my husband and I were eating at the Daily Bar, which is right down from here, and we had tickets to DPAC. He was drinking a beer, and then we realized we needed to get going and walk over to DPAC. And instead of having to basically, not finish his beer, he was able to take it with him. So it was really nice to all of a sudden realize he could take it with him. So, so I think that it's I'm really glad that you are going to be doing this at the Hub, and I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Carter?
Yes, thanks for this fun presentation. I have maybe just one concern, and I've raised it about the social district, the bullpen here as well, and that is what are locales across the nation doing to reduce waste that's associated with this? I guess when you get your beer at a restaurant, you typically drink it in a glass that's going to be washed. And so here I know you'll have a to-go container. And I know that, RTP is really pushing the progressive envelope. I believe I remember reading that at the BOCC yard, you may have a contract with the service to do washing of glassware, so you are reducing waste. And I'm wondering if you have some thoughts on that for the social district as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great thought, and honestly, that's not something I had explored yet, but it's good to kind of think on that early since our tenants are in negotiation at this point before they're leased, so that could be something we build in, having some sort of mechanism. I know one of the rules, though, is that it has to be a glass that is disposable, they can write on. So it can't be glass, but maybe there's some sort of material that can be a better fit.
Who makes that rule?
That's actually a part of the legislation that governs this.
I see.
Has to be, they have to write on the cup the date and that they actually purchased.
But it has to be disposable, literally. It can't be something you can just write on and, I don't know. Like green to go. You put these to-go containers that are not disposable, they're washed all throughout Durham. And so why couldn't there be some really cool progressive project like that?
So, excellent question. I think another great example, I don't know what's wrong with my throat. Thank you. The town of Cary just opened its downtown park, and it is a social district, and there's a hotel, the Maiden Inn, and also Cotton House, a brewery. They're on the same block. It's about 7 acres. I actually live right downtown, so I've seen how many people have come in, and what they are using is a recycled cup material, and they do have to put the date and the time for control purposes and safety. But I will tell you that what I've seen is that they reuse that cup. So if somebody orders more than one, they typically will reuse the cup. They have to control it with the date and the time because they don't want people coming in with their own alcohol, on different days, etc. So I think what I've seen is it was very clean, and people are very respectful. So in terms of the recycled, I think it's just the product that you use, and that could be something that we can explore.
Meaning that you wouldn't be in Cary, they're not disposing of these. It sounds like they're reusing them. Or that's what I'm for.
They reuse them during that day, but they have to throw it away.
Well, could we look at compostable materials or anything?
Theirs is made out of, I think it's aluminum, but it's recyclable material.
And we can help look at that. We have our sustainability coordinator that we can connect you all to help look into that. It's a great point.
It is a great point.
It's just we have to navigate it because
and RTP of all, of us who are trying to should be the one that could maybe figure this out and be the model for the rest of us for ways to improve.
And I'll just add another resource would be the Central Park, Durham Central Park. I've gone to a lot of their concerts that the city of Durham hosts, and they have a special cup, and then they have that people use for beer, and then they have a special collection bin for those cups. And my understanding is that they wash them and then reuse them at the next event. So that's another resource to look at.
I'll just say the piece we have to be careful about is it is governed that you have to be able to put on there the date and the time. And so we'll have to consider all of that in looking at the materials that we use. So we may be able to procure something that can be reused throughout the day, but at some point that cup will probably have to be disposed of. And so we'll be judicious in making sure that we minimize
how often we have to dispose of it.
Let's do the best we can.
Yes, ma'am.
You got
Yes,
it.
ma'am. We got it.
And
this is, I would just say one other thing. This is why we asked them to come before you all, because this board will have to approve the social district. And so this is exactly what we were hoping to get, your questions, concerns, that they can go back and take a look into addressing any of the questions and concerns you have.
Thank you. Commissioner Howerton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I want to chime in as well, and thank you for your presentation. And as I thought about this as I was reading through it over the weekend, I think it's time. I think it's time, and as we look at the growth that's happening in RTP and the housing and the transit that's going to happen in that area, I think it's time. And the fact that I don't live very far from it makes it even nicer. But I think the real key is the fact that it will be a housing hub there, and transportation as well. So thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. And I'd just like to add my comments. I don't drink, but I am still excited about this opportunity. And I'm glad you brought up the Cary new downtown park, because that was kind of what I was thinking as you were explaining the splash pad and other spaces, outdoor spaces, not just for individuals who are coming to drink, but just socialize in other ways. Ditto to what my commissioners and colleagues have said. Definitely ditto to Heidi about, can we look at like those paper compostable cups that can still be written on, or even like those collectible, how when you go to like Starbucks and Caribou and you can buy their mugs and reuse them, and then you get like some sort of discount for bringing that back. If there's a way we could look at even that and making them writable, being able to write on them. Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions or comments, Commissioner Burns? Oh, no.
No, y'all are giving a lot of credit to folks who are going to be lubed. That's all I'm saying, to bring their cups back.
With that, okay, thank you so much.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just one minor point. I don't think there'll be lids on them, but we also have to be careful about open container. So as we are encouraging people to, and I know people thought about this, but it lands to me to say it. You can bring that cup back and forth. That cup has to be empty when you leave and when you come back, because we are not exempted if you get in your car with alcohol in a compostable glass, stone, or whatever cup. It's unlawful. So we want to be careful about that.
Thank you, Attorney Andrews. Keeping us out of trouble. Thank you so much. And now we will move on to our next agenda item, presentation on the RTP 3.0 project. We have 60 minutes allocated for this item, and Deputy County Manager Maurice will stay with us. We will be joined by Scott Leviton, President and CEO of RTP, and Travis Creighton, RTF Senior Director of Planning, and Linda Hall again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We're going to take some time now to do a deep dive into the future of the Research Triangle Park. As you all are aware, RTP was founded as a home for leaders in research and development in our country. Many of the biggest firms in the world now find their home at RTP because of the access to some of the most innovative minds in the country through our high-quality universities. They also chose the Triangle because of our location as a desirable place to live and because of the support of state and local governments. There is no question RTP has been a great success and continues to thrive. Today, representatives from RTF are here to discuss the bright future of the park, RTP 3.0. It's a vision you received a glimpse of back in August. Since then, RTF's team has been working hard to seek guidance from their board of directors and the various companies that call RTP home. They're researching the feasibility of this vision, and they've been collaborating with staff from Durham County, the City of Durham, and Wake County to develop the next steps in this vision. Today, they will ask your feedback on this vision as they continue their efforts to transform RTP. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Scott Levitan, the RTF's President and CEO.
Thank you, Maurice. First of all, I want to note I'm actually using notes today, and I don't think I've ever presented to you without notes, but this is such an important enterprise that we're embarking on for our region and our country that I want to make sure that we get it right. And so I'd like to introduce the other folks at the table. Linda Hall, for I call her my partner, but she is the Executive Vice President and COO of the foundation. And Travis Creighton, who is our Senior Director of Planning. Travis will be actually making the presentation. Again, given the import of this activity, we have had board members join us this morning. We have Judd Bowman, who is our outgoing chair. If you could maybe either move up front or what? Yeah, that's good. We have Barbara Mulkey, who is our incoming chair, who will be chair as of January 1st. Greg Lubrecki, who is president of the RTP Owners and Tenants Association. Daniel Ennis from Duke was going to join us. I don't see him, so he may have been taken away. Anita Brown Graham, who is also a board member. And Farad Ali had a personal thing come up this morning, and he was unable to attend, but he sent his appreciation. I also personally want to thank and congratulate Chair Alam. We're looking forward to working with you, and Vice Chair Burns. You've always been a great supporter. And thank Commissioner Howerton for her support. And given how long I've been here now, Commissioner Jacobs was the first commissioner that I presented to, so we appreciate all of that. And I also want to particularly thank County Manager Sowell. She has been so engaged with us since her arrival in Durham, and all of her staff have been, and her leadership have been very engaged with us. She was very kind to designate Deputy Manager Jones to be sort of our point person on this project because it is so important. We wanted to have ongoing, continual process. Deputy Manager Jones has brought in folks from Durham City because although the Durham City is not, RTP is not part of Durham City, this project is too important to not move forward without the city engagement. And we're also running a similar process with Wake County. You might be pleased to know that we're presenting first to Durham County in December, and we'll be presenting to Wake commissioners in January. So this is really a regional impact project, and we appreciate your attention. I'm very heartened to see that you all are already very familiar with RTP 3.0 and the concept, and so we feel like we've done our job, and we're pleased that you all have been very engaged with us in this conversation. I might be better doing things without notes, but I'm going to try this morning. This is an experiment. So this is a 50-year plan for RTP. RTP as an integral part of our region, as it has been for the past 64 years. We feel like the presentation that you're going to see today, there will be a lot of resonance and consistency with the comprehensive plan for Durham County. And also, Travis was kind enough to share with me the Board of County Commissioners, the results of the Board of County Commissioners policy retreat. And I think that you all will be very pleased to see that our aspirations for RTP are very much aligned with your individual vision for what Durham County should be. There were a lot of varying ideas among the different commissioners, and I think this is 3.0 is an opportunity to embrace all of those. I think we have to, from a fundamental, basic point, acknowledge that RTP isn't broken. RTP has been a huge success story for our region and for our state and for our country. But the model, the development model for RTP has not really kept up with the way innovation communities around our country and around the world have evolved. And so our goal here is to look at the 7,000 acres of RTP as an asset for our region and our state and think about how that 7,000 acres can be more optimally used and deployed for the vision for our region. Our goal on this is we started in 2022 with a conceptual plan which we presented to you in August, and our goal is to achieve the approvals to implement this plan by the end of 2024, and that's a pretty audacious goal given what we're taking on. The requirements, there are two major requirements. One is that we would revise the zoning for RTP, and the other is one that is not within the Commissioner's control. All the land in RTP is subject to land covenants, which are governed by the Owners and Tenants Association. So this is an effort that is audacious in two respects: to get 325 companies, 200 different land parcels to agree on amending the covenants to allow RTP 3.0 to occur. The 7,000 acres is half the size of Manhattan Island, which is really a huge piece of dirt. You know, we've been successful even recently. Since 2020, we've had over $7 billion of announcement of new private investment in RTP. But the 1960s model just really isn't relevant anymore. 20% of RTP is parking lots. 20% of RTP is 1,400 acres of land, which is surface parking lots. But RTP is serviced by significant infrastructure, and it's optimally located to help our region grow intelligently. Travis is going to present in more detail, but I want to emphasize a few points. Our board is not, and we have not been charged with creating a real estate bonanza opportunity for developers. First of all, we don't own, the amount of land that we own in RTP is minimal. We are under a model where we borrowed money, our founders borrowed money to purchase the land, and then in order to pay off the debt for that land, they had to sell land. So uniquely among research parks, we can't just unilaterally say our land is going to be used for this. We have to motivate and encourage landowners to think responsibly and creatively about how to put that asset to a better use. So we want to set a framework for what the future is and how we can proceed into the future, but we can't control the future. We have to manage, collaborate, coerce, and set incentives for people to think about their land differently. We want to implement equity into the development strategy for RTP. We don't know specifically what that looks like, but we won't be measured as a success if this is not an inclusive strategy in the end. We need to help our region grow in a sustainable manner, and Travis is going to provide some touch points about what the projection for growth of our region is, and it is scary. We have an opportunity to not grow like other major innovation centers like Austin and Salt Lake City and even the suburbs of Washington, D.C., where transportation and equity and sustainability, now it's almost impossible for them to be able to claw that back. And then we want to develop a strategy to fund innovative programs around transportation, housing, family services, education for our counties. I know that those are issues that resonate with the commissioners from your policy retreat. And then lastly, and I think this is very important, and our board is very committed to this. You know, we have 4 universities that sit on our board: UNC, Chapel Hill, Duke University, NC State, and North Carolina Central University. We have partnerships that we've started over the past 2 years among Shaw University and North Carolina A&T, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Dr. Sowell. And we want to do more in that way, but we need to remain competitive as an innovation region. And I think you may or may not be aware that there have been a number of federal opportunities that have come out of the Reinvestment Act, which we have competed for and not been recipients. And that is a wake-up call particularly to the university leaders on our board, that RTP can play a role, and revenue that's generated from 3.0 can provide meaningful support for us to be able to be more competitive to retain our top-tier innovation region status in the country. And so that is very important to our board and to particularly the universities on our board. So with that, I will stop. Again, I very much appreciate the opportunity to be here. As you can tell from Amanda's amazing presentation, all the work is done by our team, and we appreciate your support and questions at the end. So I'll turn it over to Travis.
Thank you, Scott, and good morning, Chair Alam, Vice Chair Burns, and Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be back in front of you again. This is my third time before you this year, so I hope that demonstrates our continued collaboration with you all and our excitement to collaborate with you on the future of RTP. Scott gave a great overview and introduction, and I know that you all know us well, so I'll be brief on a couple of these introductory slides and then dive into the specifics that I'm sure you all are eager to hear about, and we're certainly eager to hear your thoughts on as we continue to embark on this planning process. I always like to start these presentations with just a slide of our mission to emphasize why it is we're doing what we're doing and why we are planning for the future of RTP in the way that we are. Our mission has always been about the collaboration between the universities, that impact between the universities and industry. And our bottom line as a 501c4 nonprofit is to deliver an economic impact for the residents of North Carolina. So when we talk about the physical planning that we're embarking on and the vision that we're charting, it all comes back to this mission. And this is why we see the need to think about the future of RTP for the next 50 years in the way that we do. Scott already talked about the universities on our board and their importance there, so I will let that stand and move right along. Just to underscore a couple of key things that Scott also mentioned, this is our map of RTP today, highlighting a number of our largest companies throughout our 7,000 acres. We estimate we have about 55,000 employees associated with our RTP companies, of which there are approximately 375 at our last count, and we're continually monitoring that number and trying to get as many updates as we can on that. And unique to our region and among research parks, we also have a variety of industries represented in RTP, as you can see here by looking at just a couple of our top industries in the park. So Scott introduced the size of RTP, and we always like to sort of give a little bit more context and scale to what it means when we say RTP is 7,000 acres sitting in the center of our region. So one way we do that is to just do a regional comparison. So on the right side of the screen here, you see the outline of RTP. That's our 7,000 acres. That's the physical boundaries of the park. And on the left, you see a number of destinations in our region that we know. So downtown Durham, the campuses of NC Central, Duke, our other universities, and also downtown Raleigh. So these are places that many of us know, we walk through every day, we can visualize very easily in our heads. And what we find really underscores the point and the opportunity we have when we talk about RTP is if you take these 6 areas that we know and identify in our region, they all will fit in RTP 7,000 acres. So this is really the scale that we're talking about when we talk about the size of RTP and really the reason that we're planning for the utilization of this land in the way that we are. With Amanda's presentation before this, and I know we've come to you many times to talk about Hub, you're very well versed in what we're doing there, but I always like to just highlight Hub at the beginning of this presentation because it really is an important precedent before we move into the RTP 3.0 planning process. And it's one of the key catalysts for why we're thinking about the future of the park. So with the development of Hub and the first 50 acres, this new downtown for RTP, something we've never had, it does introduce the question of, well, what does this mean for the rest of RTP's 7,000 acres? And how do we need to think about the future of the park through that lens? So we always start with this just to say it is an important and catalytic project that has been an important input and piece of thinking as we think about the future of the park. So we call this RTP 3.0, and I just want to explain why we do that. So as we think about the evolution of the park over time, really the park today as it exists was built under this RTP 1.0 model, which you see here. This is the original 1958 sketch plan for the park. So when the park was envisioned, it was very much this vision of all that purple that you see is what they were calling the research estates at the time in 1958. And that has become our corporate campuses that define the park's physical character today. So really this has been the vision for the park's development in its 64 years of existence. And as I mentioned, Hub really is sort of this point in time. It's our RTP 2.0 moment to say, well, we recognize there's a need for a mixed-use urban environment with amenities that serve employees and the community, but that's just one 50-acre development. So it really has led us to this question, and the guiding question of RTP 3.0 is really, what's next for the park? What do we need to do today in 2023 to imagine the next 50 years of RTP and put in place the right framework and structure to allow the park to continue to achieve its mission well into the future for our region and our state? So when we talk about RTP 3.0, there's just a couple of key points that underscore what it is. It really is a 50-year planning process. So we are looking forward to 2073. What does that RTP look like, and how does it need to differ from the RTP that exists today? RTP 3.0 is a planning process, and I'll give you in just a moment a little bit of the background on how we've gotten to where we are today. And it really is meant to be a collaborative vision. As Scott outlined, none of this is possible without the support of our local governments and our companies. The governance of RTP is very much a shared governance model, and it does take the agreement and buy-in of many different parties for us to achieve this. So while we as RTF really see ourselves as the steward and the leader of this process, it really is a collaborative effort, and we look forward to all of your feedback and input today. So to give you a background on how we've gotten to where we are today, the genesis of the need for RTP 3.0 as a planning process really dates back to fall of 2021 when our strategic engagement team at that time undertook an effort called 300 and 100. And that was an effort with the goal of speaking to all 300, which we thought was the number of companies at the time, park companies in a 100-day time frame. And that effort really led to a lot of valuable feedback from our park companies, particularly at a moment where many of them were grappling with return to office in a post-pandemic environment. How have things changed? What are their worries? What are their concerns? What are their needs? A lot of that was all very prevalent at this moment in time. And one of the key things that we heard through that and through the identification of some trends there was concern about talent attraction and retention and the increasing competitiveness of the markets in which our companies operate. How can we provide the amenities that our employees want and demand to be able to continue to attract talent, retain talent, and allow our businesses to grow really successfully? And as a result of that, we really identified that has a key physical and planning component to it, right? How do we create the physical environment to allow talent attraction and retention to really succeed and to grow an innovation ecosystem for not just RTP, but really for our region and state over time? So that way, as we look 50 years into the future, we really are positioned to continue to attract that talent that we want and need and create that environment for innovation to thrive. So that led us to, in April of 2022 last year, to kick off a feasibility study. And the feasibility study was termed that because it really was meant to just be an exploratory effort to understand what might be possible, what's happening in other innovation districts, business parks, markets that we're competing with, and what will our companies accept? So we really guided that with a couple of key questions. We used Hub as that catalyst to say, well, this is one example of new mixed-use development in the park. What does that mean for the rest of the park? As we talk with our companies who've really developed under one specific development model, what would they be supportive of as we think about a different vision? And related to that, as we think about an overall rezoning strategy, what are many of the considerations that we need to build into that? So through that feasibility study process, we had a really robust engagement with our companies, our largest companies in the park, to get some feedback. We had some initial conversations with staff at a government level to understand some of the considerations related to zoning and things we need to think about. And we really had a number of key takeaways from that process. A lot of what we heard was support for the vision of RTP. And this is really what RTP has always done, right? We've always been that economic catalyst for our region and state. We want to keep doing that. And whatever we do, we don't want to lose that, right? I've said talent attraction and retention a lot here. That has been a key theme and concern from our companies. So it really is whatever we do, we want to make sure we ground it in retaining that talent who's coming out of our area universities, keeping them here, nurturing them, making them part of our innovation ecosystem, continuing to attract global talent as we've had many successes in the past. We want to keep doing that. And we want to root it all in groundbreaking research and development and technological discovery, which really is what RTP's purpose is. So we don't want to lose that. But we also heard we want to be more responsive to that talent attraction and retention concern. You know, Hub is one example of response to that, creating an environment where innovation can thrive. What more can we do, and how can we put the right framework in place to be more responsive to that? As we look at the markets that our companies are increasingly competing with, you know, we look to places like South Lake Union in Seattle, the Bay Area, DC, Boston, New York, areas where talent might want to locate. How do we continue to position RTP to compete effectively against those markets and other emerging markets that we'll likely be competing with over the next 50 years? And central to the feedback that we heard was support for this key idea, which has really underscored the work that we've done since the feasibility study. And that is support for the idea of additional mixed-use nodes in RTP. So while Hub RTP will be the first and likely the most important as our downtown, our anchoring center, the place where everyone gathers when they say they're in RTP, in 7,000 acres, a single 50 or 100-acre development can't do that for all of our companies who have that need. So how do we create more walkable amenities in the park? We need more mixed-use nodes. Hub can't be the only one. So there's an opportunity for more of that. So how do we do that, and how do we think about that going forward? That led us to a Phase 2 kickoff in the RTP 3.0 process that happened in March of this year. And the whole purpose of Phase 2 is to get into those granular details, right? How do we go from this key support for this vision and this idea to actually realizing that? And so the guiding questions we've taken into Phase 2 are, you know, how do we take that vision and how do we go from idea to implementation? How do we think about governing a new mixed-use RTP? What are the right authorities that we need to put in place to successfully nurture that and steward it over the next 50 years? And what are all of the plans, documents, standards, guidelines that we need to develop and put in place to be able to create the RTP of the future that we see as the vision for the future? How do we do that? And so these are really the things that we are working on now and will continue working on over the next year to try to achieve this RTP 3.0 vision. The other key piece of this is that we are doing this not in a vacuum. We recognize that RTP and its 7,000 acres is part of our Triangle region. And when we look around the region, we are planning for the future of a business park in a growing region. If we look just from the past two censuses, so from 2010 to 2020, our combined Research Triangle region, both the Raleigh and Durham MSAs, was the third fastest growing metropolitan region in the country. We are projected to continue that, and I know you all know this. We're going to grow by 1 million people by 2050, and that's only sort of about halfway in our 50-year planning horizon that we're thinking about for RTP. So there's a real need to think about RTP in this context as well, right? How do we better utilize RTP's land resources and its proximity, its location in the center of our region to contribute positively to the growth that in some cases the growth of RTP companies is contributing to and creating? And how do we do that responsibly? We really see this as not just an opportunity to better utilize the land resource in RTP, but really as a responsibility that we have to the region to ensure that the planning that we put in place addresses those growth challenges proactively. So through the process to date, we've really landed on a couple of key guiding principles and ideas. And that's what this slide is really meant to summarize here. Through all the conversations, we've really arrived on this key goal of maintaining RTP as that global epicenter of innovation. We want to make RTP more sustainable. We know that that's really important for our companies. It's important for our region and our world. How do we embed that in our thinking? And how do we do it all to strengthen RTP's position as an economic driver for our region? Some of the ways that we see needing to do that are diversifying those uses in the park. So going from one type of campus you're allowed to build in one type of environment to a multiplicity of different environment types, including not just the opportunity to work in the park, but also live in the park, visit the park, have recreation experiences in the park, realize it as a fully realized place. We see a need to add those amenities, again, to support talent attraction and retention at its core, thinking about those place-making strategies that activate the park, create public and open spaces to invite people who otherwise would never work in the park, but now have new reasons to be in the park and experience the park as an important part of our region. And from a foundation perspective, going back to our stewardship role, we see a really critical need to do this in a really connected and thoughtful way. So the goal is to realize RTP as one place, and to do that requires thinking about mobility, connectivity, greenways, alternative modes of transportation and transit, which we can talk more about later. But all of those things are important for us to realize to make RTP of the future a success. We also want to do this in a way that advances university research. That goes back to our key mission and our founding universities, our universities on our board. How do we continue to support that research commercialization, that linkage between our universities and industry? And this is an opportunity for us to potentially strengthen that going forward. So we want to make sure that our strategies are doing that. We also, as Scott talked about, we really want to do this in an inclusive and resilient way, recognizing that RTP is an asset for our region and for all of the people of our region. And again, going back to our statewide mission for all the residents of North Carolina. So how can we better utilize that part of our mission and incorporate it into our strategy? And again, all of this is in support of research and development. And so we recognize that for some of our companies today that have built their private corporate campus under that RTP 1.0 model, they might want to retain that. And we think that's okay. That can still be an allowed use in the park. We can continue to support those companies and their growth. But in 7,000 acres, we think there's an opportunity for a multiplicity of uses and a way to create those mixed-use centers elsewhere in the park. So we're going to continue to validate that and work through a variety of ways that RTP might evolve over time. So through the framework work to date, we've really organized our thinking into three key new place types that we want to introduce in the park so it can evolve over time. So I'll walk through just some examples and precedents we've looked at to inspire us as we think about the future of RTP. And just to set the stage here, this is again a map of our 7,000 acres. It gives you a sense of some of the natural environments that flow through the park, our lakes and streams, our protected areas. And you can also see some of the building footprints outlined on this map to again give you a sense of what's on the ground today and how much land there is still in the park as we think about this future growth. We've organized our framework concept again into these three kind of key place types. And as Scott emphasized, we don't own the land in the park, so it really has to be a framework that provides opportunities to our landowners to say, this aligns with my business strategy, my repositioning of my land, and I want to buy into that. So we're creating opportunities for our landowners to think differently about their campuses and allow them to evolve over time. And it really is meant to be a flexible framework to respond to those different needs of our companies at different points in time. And so that's how we really approached this process and developed it to date. What you see here is just a very conceptual rendering of our predominant existing place type in the park, right? So you see the building kind of in the middle of the parcel, surrounded by surface parking and buffered on all sides by green space. That's due to the regulations and the zoning, how pretty much every campus in the park is developed today. So how might this evolve over time? One of those models we've thought about that might make sense for some of our companies and allow RTP to develop and address these challenges we've identified is through what we've termed the enhanced corporate campus. So for some of our companies who want to stick with kind of their core business model but want to grow their business, if they wanted to do that today, they would largely have to acquire more land because of the low intensity zoning and development regulations on that. We would like to modify this to allow folks to grow their companies within their existing footprint. So shift those surface lots to structured parking and do infill development around that campus as that business grows. This is also an opportunity potentially for some of our companies that want to have a public-facing component to introduce a public-facing restaurant or a cafe. Things that are currently not allowed under the covenants could also fit into the enhanced corporate campus model as well. The second place type that we've conceptualized for RTP 3.0 is introducing residential neighborhoods into the park. And we really want to do this through a 15-minute city lens. So connected streets, amenities that support residential, so grocery stores, bars, shops, restaurants, services, all of those would be incorporated into these neighborhoods. And also in terms of the housing type, we really see this as not a predominant single-family housing type, but a variety of housing types, touching on those missing middle housing types, duplexes, triplexes, multiple unit houses, apartment buildings, all of that could create and activate new residential neighborhoods in the park as we think about our housing need and that growth. And also from a talent attraction and retention standpoint, demand to be able to live closer to where you work and be able to walk or bike to work, which is currently something that RTP employees by and large can't do. And lastly, there's that place type of the mixed-use density node. So that's that hub RTP model, a fully realized mixed-use dense community. And for some of our campuses in the park, this might be a way to reposition that land and create those additional mixed-use centers that we hear are important and could really support the park's economic growth well into the future. So these renderings are all very conceptual, right? They're just sort of laid out using sort of a modeling software. So what does this actually look like in reality? So one thing that we've done is look around the country and in some cases internationally for some precedent examples that showcase the type of environment we would like to create in the park and that we see as supporting innovation as we grow forward. So to give you some examples of that mixed-use density node, what might that look like in the park? We have Hub as one model, but we've been inspired by other examples as well. So this is an example from the University of British Columbia, just south of their campus in Vancouver. This is called Westbrook Place, and this aerial gives you a sense of how they've created a mixed-use density node. It also is almost sort of carved out of the natural environment, right? So you see the forest just to the south here. We hear from employees in the park all the time that that existing forest environment is an important defining characteristic of the park. So this precedent example shows a way we might add mixed use but still preserve that natural setting that's important to the park's history, right? You can see how they sort of carved out those higher rise residential towers along the edge. There's lower density residential in the middle. There's a fully realized grocery store, a school, other shops and amenities, all in this mixed use density node, right? So this is an example of some of what we are hoping and aspire to create in the park. On a little bit more of a ground level here, so this is within that development, you can see some of the experience walking around here, the variety of different types of housing, the different scales, the different sizes, some of the public plaza spaces, and the last photo on the bottom right here, that's actually a full-size grocery store with apartments above it, integrated really well into a robust public realm in this mixed-use environment. So this is one way that we've thought, this is a precedent we could look at and try to think about how it would apply in a North Carolina context. For those residential neighborhoods, what might that look like? This is an example of a neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, in northeast Portland called Kearns. And it sort of underscores a couple of those key principles we want to think about for residential development in the park. It has connected gridded streets. There's a major retail corridor on the very bottom of the screen here on that Burnside Street corridor. There's a school located right in the center of this community. There's 2 grocery stores and a variety of residential densities. This neighborhood is probably a little bit lower density than we would think in the park, probably has more single family, but it also has a number of these courtyard style buildings, which has a multiplicity of units integrated right into the residential neighborhood. And that's a key housing type we've thought about for the future of the park. To get a sense of kind of the street scale here, you can see there's the Whole Foods on the Burnside corridor, that major retail corridor in this neighborhood. In the bottom left is one of those courtyard-style buildings. So this has about 10 units integrated facing a courtyard, a denser style of housing, which we don't have much of in North Carolina as a whole. Another streetscape on the bottom right here to show how those trees have evolved over time. There's, again, a variety of residential density on both the left and right side of the street to create a really compelling neighborhood to live in, but at a greater level of density to provide more housing for folks. And lastly, that enhanced corporate campus model. So what might that look like? This is an example from Indianapolis, the Eli Lilly headquarters. It's located just south of downtown Indianapolis on about 100 acres. And if you look at just the different types of what's on this campus, it looks like a lot of RTP campuses today. There's a recreation component, there's a lake, there's some trails and connectivity, but this is done at a much denser scale than you typically see in RTP. So you have much taller buildings, you have multiple parking decks, so that going from surface parking to structured parking. You still have the natural environment included in it. To the north of this site, they've actually created a public park on part of the campus to kind of connect the campus to the neighborhood. And they still have some surface parking that could, again, be repurposed in the future here. So this gives you a sense of how RTP campuses might evolve over time, still wanting to retain that campus characteristic, but becoming more integrated and dense over time as a part of the evolution. And to get, again, on the ground here, the top photo is actually taken from, this was on the stop of the Durham intercity visit, so I took that top photo looking north to downtown Indianapolis at the top of one of the Eli Lilly buildings there. You can see that Eli Lilly sign is fronting on the public park they've created adjacent to their parking lots, and that other photo on the bottom there just shows sort of that green space they've created on an internal courtyard for their employees there. So the other thing I wanted to bring up and emphasize here is we're well aware of the new Durham Comprehensive Plan. We've spent a lot of time with it. We spent a lot of time with the drafts of that plan as we were beginning to get into this vision, because one thing we wanted to ensure is that our vision for RTP aligns with our community's vision for where Durham is going and how we might evolve over time. So I've just pulled here the key goals and objectives from that plan, and we've done an initial scan. And we think with our RTP 3.0 vision, 15 of these 32 objectives can be directly supported by RTP 3.0. And our hope is that the ones that aren't highlighted, there can be indirect impacts as a result of RTP 3.0 on achieving those community objectives as well. And that's very much how we're thinking about this, is aligning our goals and visions with the shared vision of our community and ensuring that we are in alignment there. To call out just a couple of specifics from the comprehensive plan that we think RTP 3.0 speaks specifically to, looking at the growth management strategy in that document, there's an emphasis here on thinking about that access to everyday essentials, parks, shops, restaurants, trails, community centers, and doing it all in a 15-minute trip. And we really have thought about the need to create that 15-minute city model in RTP, recognizing that our RTP 1.0 vision was really the antithesis of that. So how do we redevelop the park in a way to align with this core part of the Durham Comprehensive Plan and the core part of the vision for the future of Durham? The other excerpt I just want to call out is the employment campus place type. And if you look at the place type map in the comprehensive plan, this is by far the dominant place type in RTP, really with the exception of Hub, which is a transit opportunity area. Everything else is an employment campus in the park. And some of the language that the comprehensive plan calls on for employment campuses is to be able to fill in those developments rather than expanding outward. I hope you see that in our enhanced corporate campus thinking there. Adding more of those mixes of uses, so housing, restaurant, grocery stores, convenience stores, retail, medical office, natural areas, all of those touch on all three of the place types, excuse me, that we're thinking about for the park. And again, increasing connectivity and providing access to transit. We're also thinking a lot about, excuse me, the importance of doing that and creating a multimodal community in the park where today we really don't have that. So we think there's a lot of strong linkages between the comprehensive plan and our RTP 3.0 vision, and we look forward to discussing that more with you. So I now want to dive in just a little bit on how do we go from here? How do we move to producing the deliverables that we hope to produce and bring to you all for your input and consideration, and how might implementation proceed from here? We've organized the outcomes from our RTP 3.0 process into 4 key categories. So the first is those zoning changes, covenant changes, and governance changes that are all required in order to realize this vision. So from a county perspective, those zoning changes rely with you all and your jurisdiction, so we definitely need to have a robust discussion with you all on that. Our hope is to bring those proposals to you after your input and consideration help shape them for that consideration. The covenant vote will be required as a vote of our Owners and Tenants Association, so all of our park companies, a majority of them will also have to vote to change those private covenants and create that private piece of this for governance of the park going forward. There's also, separately from the regulations, a number of visioning and planning documents, right? So we have the regulations that say, here's how technically we want development to occur, but what's the vision behind that? What are we aspiring to do? And so we've scoped a number of these vision and planning documents to come out of our RTP 3.0 process as well. That includes a specific sort of sub-area plan for the NC 54 corridor through the park, recognizing that that corridor is essential to the future of transportation in our region. It's where a number of transportation connections regionally are envisioned to converge in our planning documents. It's also the site of Hub, which really is our first and most important mixed-use node. So we've done some specific visioning for that corridor and how it may evolve over time. We've worked very closely with our partners at Go Triangle on developing a transit-oriented development vision for the parcel inside RTP where the Regional Transit Center is anticipated to relocate, now called the Triangle Mobility Hub. We've done some specific sub-area planning for that parcel. And we also will produce a separate greenway plan for RTP that includes not just anticipating the future Triangle Bikeway, which will pass through the park, but also a north-south greenway to provide connectivity throughout RTP's 7,000 acres and connect to our existing 20 miles of trails in the park, as well as upgrading those over time, and also importantly, connecting them to things like the American Tobacco Trail and our neighboring trail networks. So we really realize a fully regional trail network connecting to all the communities bordering the park. We also anticipate producing a number of development standards. So for us to really create this high quality environment that requires the standards that say, here's how a street should look in RTP, here's how the streetscape should be designed, here's how we integrate multimodal transportation, so that as redevelopment occurs over time, it creates a really high quality public realm, which we see as integral to the success of RTP as a place, an innovation district, and as the center of that innovation ecosystem for the future of our region. And lastly, we're also working on a number of policies, incentives, and requirements for a number of key areas that we recognize are challenges for our region. So these include things like, how do we produce affordable housing in the park? How do we ensure that as development occurs, there is sustainability embedded in the building, the site plan, the overall site design? How do we ensure that space is set aside for open space and recreation? How do we make sure that there's a process for thinking about land that's needed for schools, libraries, and other public and civic uses? And also going back to our mission, how do we support our universities in all this? And what might be the right policy, regulation, or incentive to ensure that those needs are also met as the park evolves over time? So we're working on all of these right now. And the reason we have these 4 separate categories is because we see that when they come together, we hope they achieve our goals and outcomes that we aspire to with RTP 3.0. And that's really to position RTP as the premier 21st century innovation community. It's to facilitate the growth of our overall regional innovation ecosystem, not just in the park, but across the region, and also anchoring the R&D activities coming out of our university in a strength and innovation hub in RTP. So how do we build that relationship up? And whatever the next big thing is, how can we make sure it happens in RTP? That's what we're aspiring to do here. Lastly, I just want to dive in specifically on the zoning piece, since that is obviously a key part and point of collaboration where we will need to have with you all. We've given some preliminary thought to this and are eager for your feedback on this. We've also shared this with Director Young and her staff to get some input from them as the planning department. But we've preliminarily thought about how we might begin to realize this vision. And we think what might make the most sense is to keep our existing RTP zoning as the baseline zoning. So for companies that want to continue to build up to their corporate campus under that existing entitlement, they can do so. But for companies who want to develop differently and choose one of these new place types, develop more densely, introduce uses that to date are currently prohibited, we would create an overlay district or possibly overlay districts depending on exactly how we want to structure the regulations that would incorporate all those new regulations and requirements. And so that way, that overlay would become the way to implement these new uses, place types, and denser uses in the park, and companies would choose to opt into that. I also would just want to give you some sense of how we've begun to think about the development process. So let's suppose a landowner, if this is implemented, a landowner wants to move forward with a new development in the park that either is more dense than allowed or introduces those new uses. What might that look like? So today, the way this process works in the park, due to the combination of the covenants and the zoning, it's a pretty straightforward process. So if you want to develop your campus day in the park, you go through the county process, do that, you submit your development plan, your site plan, all those reviews and permits, that goes through the county government process. The RTF piece of this comes at a pretty late stage in the process. When you have your final construction drawings, you're required to get approval from the RTP Board of Design, and that's a creation of the covenants. And so there is an architectural level of review that occurs at the foundation. Going forward, we want to introduce a private process before folks would move into this county process. And so we've proposed creating privately in the covenants a process that we imagine landowners would go through to utilize a new use or a denser use. They would come to us as the foundation and propose what they want to do with their site. Here's the uses we would like to do. Here's the development intensity. Here's a concept plan of how we imagine this unfolding. We would then, under the covenants, create an internal planning board to the foundation that would review that proposal. And importantly, that planning board would also review a number of the privately enforced development requirements we anticipate creating. So you may recall on an earlier slide those policies, incentives, and requirements. Some of those include some things that are not typically done in North Carolina. We think we have an opportunity to privately, through our covenants, have those standards and have them be enforceable through a private mechanism like this. So we would want to create this board to ensure that that board would adopt those standards and then review applications to ensure that they are in compliance with those privately enforced standards done at an RTF level. And if that review determines that proposal is in line with those required and privately enforced standards, that board would grant approval, and then it would just be the normal standard process. They would go through the county process to submit all of their site plan approvals, development reviews, inspections, all of those things that the county already does. They would keep doing after that private process, and we would still retain a design review as we currently do in the park at the end of the process to ensure that those streetscape standards, street standards, that really important public realm is still enforced and realized through a private mechanism as well at the end of the process.
I know we're holding questions to the end, but Travis, I'm going to stop you right there just so I can make sure I'm clear on this. And it's just for clarification. I know people get scared when I ask questions. It's just a clarification. So in the event somebody were to go through the three-step process that you all would put within your covenant and they did not pass through that process, what mechanism do you imagine you would have in place with our office so that that person could not submit independently?
That's a great question. I think we certainly would want to make sure that we have the developed relationships with the planning staff to ensure that they're notified that we did not approve this development proposal. We would not consider it to be allowed under the covenants because our remedy under the covenants would be to introduce a legal action if action were taken that were not compliant with the covenants.
Gotcha. Okay.
Hopefully we could have a process in place so that way they're not getting permit approvals from the city for something that we didn't privately approve, so that process can be simpler on the end. But we would definitely want to work on those relationships and make sure we have that understanding in place.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
So our next steps in this process, we're going to continue to work on these deliverables that we see as the 3.0 vision, continue to report out as we get more detail into what those will be. Again, I want to underscore this is truly a collaborative process, and none of this is possible without the buy-in from you all as our local government partner and Wake County as our local government partner and our companies, because that's the nature of governance in the park. It's a shared governance model, and so we value your input today to make sure we have this vision right and that it aligns with where Durham wants to go. And we are going to continue to work toward our schedule of producing these internal deliverables from the RTF team by summer of next year with a goal of bringing you all a zoning proposal that hopefully meets your needs and ours next summer for your consideration into the fall of next year. And I'm happy to stop there, and we're happy to have a robust discussion and answer any of your questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I'm filled with notes. I will open it up to our board members first before I ask my questions. Heidi, Commissioner Carter.
What a fantastic presentation. You did just a great job of making the work that you're trying to do really clear and making it exciting at the same time. Really appreciate this presentation and these very detailed slides for us to keep as reference points. I'm just going to jump right to the very end. The privately enforced development requirements seems like a really neat opportunity, almost, I guess I can say this out loud, almost like a workaround in a way for things that we can't do. But would you, am I understanding this correctly, that like you would be able to have privately enforced development requirements that we might not be able to have? So very cool.
Yes, as long as they're privately enforced through a covenant, our lawyers advise us that is a contractual agreement, and so it does not run afoul of any government limitation there because it's purely a private contract.
Great. And you're hoping to have a new RTP planning board that will, enforce these requirements. Who will draft the requirements, and how will you do that?
We anticipate so we're working with a very robust consulting team on all of these deliverables, led by Ayer St. Gross out of Baltimore, a master planner there with a number of sub-consultants. We envision that they would produce those initial regulations as a part of their scope, and then we would ask the board to adopt them, and then we internally at RTF would monitor those in an ongoing way to continue to check in over time. Are these the right policies? Are they producing the right outcomes? Do we need to modify them? Similar to what you all and your planning staff do over time with your requirements.
Okay, great. And, as an example, might RTP 3.0 be able to include development requirements like inclusive zoning for affordable housing, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Which would help you advance your equity goals and help you achieve all of the goals that are in that we have in our comp plan. I loved how you laid out how well aligned the work that you're trying to do is with the comp plan, which is fabulous. The 15-minute city model and the employment campus, it just really is a nice, neat package in the way that it aligns. What about, could you talk a little bit more about the incorporation of public uses, for example, schools? I'm really interested in schools. Like, what do you see there? What kinds of things are you talking about there?
Well, I'll let Scott talk in a moment, but I will say we're very much aware of the need to plan for that. We haven't quite landed on necessarily what is the mechanism. We've spoken with Wake County Public Schools about this, and we're speaking with Durham Public Schools tomorrow. Actually, we have a call with their growth planner to talk about the growth needs and how we might allow this to happen. One of the things we're working on with our consulting team is there an incentive to donate land for a school site? Or if a library is identified as a desired use, might there be some incentive mechanism to allow a developer to do more if they set aside that land or donate that land for that? We're again working out on how that might happen and hoping to talk with the school system about how might that technically work. Can you receive the land? What do we need to understand from your internal processes to make that a success? So that's just one idea, but we hope to have a more robust discussion with the school system about how to align that.
I wanted to provide one other comment on that. In the end, sometimes it all comes down to money. Mm-hmm. And so aspirations are wonderful, but we need to think about how to fund this. So the development is likely to mostly be privately funded development. But in the revenue stack to support public amenities, desired or required, there really are three ways of funding those. So one, there is going to be incremental tax, because as we can imagine, the value of the land in RTP over time will really increase significantly. The other is there is already regulation which allows overlay districts called URSD. You don't want me to mention this?
No, you can. I have slides on it, though. But that's fine. Go ahead.
Which, I don't know, we might run out of time. But if you want to put the slides up, that would be good. It's Urban Research and Science District. So that allows, once a URSD is overlaid on a particular site, it allows a designated additional tax on that land to support benefits for that land. So it's really interesting. Thank you for this slide, and we can share this with you. It allows you to increase the tax on that designated parcel up to the level of the adjacent municipal tax rate. So you all know there is already the Durham Wake Service District, because we are not incorporated within any municipality, but there is a significant increment also that could be generated from the URSD imposed on particular parcels around RTP. And the third is really an aspiration of ours. Along the way, there is going to be significant increased value created in the land. Now, for existing landowners, first of all, development happens when a for-profit developer is motivated to be able to make a return on their investment. So nothing will happen if the developers for sites aren't going to be able to make a profit on what they're doing. But in that context, the incremental value created in just the land, or the residual value in the land that is created from upzoning that land and changing the covenants on that land, could be significant. And so part of the analysis that we've undertaken is to determine, is there a private fund, for bookmarking it we're calling the RTP Reinvestment Fund, that some of that enhanced land value could accrue to this fund that would also be able to address aspirational investments to be made in RTP, or aspirational investments to be made to help our universities be more competitive when they're seeking research dollars and research funding, or for the next big thing that will maintain competitiveness for our region. And that would be a discretionary fund to be able to use to be able to jumpstart some strategic initiatives that come out of RTP 3.0.
Very cool. So much you've given us to really ponder on here. Thanks for that additional explanation, and I would like to have that slide, the one that's authorized but wasn't used.
It is in your packet.
It's in the packet. Okay, great. Thanks. So there are plenty of things I could mention, but I'll hold with that. Thank you so much.
Vice Chair Burns?
Okay, so you did answer already. One, thank you for this presentation as always. It's always very thorough when you all come up here.
Thank you, Commissioner Burns.
Which means I have to ask really hard questions now. The Chief of Staff said one day, I've dropped creamer. She said, first I give sugar and then it comes the salt. At least I'm on brand. So it's not going to be that bad. Here's where my struggle is. I always want Durham to build out processes that outlast people. And it seems that that's what this has done, right? We want to build something that is inclusive. You all have taken the time to align it with our plan. You all have been conscientious enough to go to our schools and to come to us first and to go to Wake County. So all that's really, really great. But here's where my rub is, and it's not necessarily with this. It is with who comes after you. Who comes after
Say that
the
again
three?
for our board
All
members.
three, right? But all three, and I love many of your board members. Say it that way. Many of your board members. But, Linda, we've had a time. I know you care about affordable housing. Travis, I love your glasses, and I know you care about affordable housing. Scott, we've talked about, affordable housing and transit. In the event you are all hit by a bus, I need to make sure that, these are things that we can put in place. So I'm going to give a random example. I chair Joint City-County Planning, and there are things, that board, we are very limited in, what we can do. To kind of sort of elevate something Commissioner Carter said, I think it's great that we're going to be in a position for you all to put covenants in place to do things that our hands have traditionally been too tied to do. But what usually happens, we see certain people come into this body or to that meeting or to the planning commission or go up to the city, and they'll say, we're going to do all of these things. And those things include, we will give money to the schools. I'm not going to give the name, I'm not going to elevate the name of that project, but there was one recently, it's a $4 billion project, and they said, we're going to give money to the schools. It was $23,000. Mubinga pays more for ink pens and Post-its than $23,000. Nor were the schools even talked to about what the donation would look like. Is this $23,000 actually something that we need? Did we say we were going to put this on debt for students? You know what I'm saying? It wasn't even just take our $23,000 and we did what we said we were going to do. Again, that's not you all. Same thing to be said. They say we'll do a set aside for affordable housing. That set aside isn't in a covenant. It's not in a trust. So now they can sell it the next year, sell it the next month, and now that inventory doesn't exist. So I'll say all that to say I feel pretty good about the fact that you all are going to put some things in place that will hold people to the fire to do what they say they're going to do. But again, once you all are gone, having this kind of privatized model, somebody could come in here and really go 100 miles per hour to the right of what we've tried to build here. And so I wanted to elevate that somewhat because I do know this is a development. It's a private development, and my liberal ideas of what I want my home. See, I have to be very careful when people say Durham. I say my home to look like. So I would be interested in seeing the devil in the details, because I think that's what's killing this county right now is the fact that we have these loopholes you can drive Mack trucks through. And I can tell you all are trying to be intentional, but I want you all to help me find the pitfalls in that intentionality, because I guarantee you somebody in the private sector is watching this and they are thinking of ways to drive that truck through this. So that's to elevate just a thought around it, and we can talk about that later. Do want to go back. You gave some examples of what it would look like I'm going to use, like, y'all been to Fenton's, right? Is that what we are imagining here? Because, I saw the Eli Lilly campus. We were all in Indiana together. Like, are we looking to do something that is that tight? And I ask, and I hate to use them as an example, I worry sometimes about office space, right? We see New York Times and everybody saying we're not coming back. And we're seeing these very dense spaces being developed right now. And then you see the office spaces empty. So, one, how do we plan on working with that as folks don't want to come back to work? And also, are we in a position to say, you know what, we won't use this as office space. We will flip this to a restaurant. Like, how malleable are the spaces that you all are developing there? That way we can say, all right, can't build this. Maybe we'll build it this way. And I'll stop on that one.
So I'm going to try to respond.
That was one question. The other one was elevated oratory.
No, I know that the first one was your most important statement, and I think it's important. I think you framed it very well, and I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. I'm glad our board is here to hear your passion around that, and I think it is a challenge that we clearly, as a legacy, want to make sure that the vision and the aspiration for the amazing asset that is RTP remains consistent with the plan that we're setting out here. So you're in government, you know what happens to comprehensive plans, and we need to do our best, and we need input from the counties and our other constituents and our companies to create those, not roadblocks, but those, parentheses in which we can be confident that the plan will be implemented. To your second point, the development will be driven. Again, we do not own we don't own most of the land in RTP, so the development is going to be market driven, and I think the development. The people who implement the private developers or the companies or who implement the private development are going to be responding to the market. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Where we sit today, it feels like there is a significant need to add housing in the Triangle region. Mm-hmm. So Travis had a number up there, 400,000 dwelling units. It sounds like a big number, but the reality is that in the 3-county region, we're producing about 9,000 dwelling units a year. And from the slide that Travis had up there, a demand for 400,000 over the next 20 years, we should be producing 20,000 dwelling units a year. Right. And we see what impact that has had on our housing market. And so within the foreseeable future, one could envision that the development that wants to happen in RTP is going to be around residential amenities, amenitized office and lab and research space, because that's what the market is saying it wants to be. I don't think we can prescribe today what the market's going to be in 40 years. And so that's why we need stewards of this plan to be able to respond to how the market evolves. Linda, I don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah, excellent. Your first question was an excellent question. I echo Scott on that. I think the slide that we're looking at right here helps because there's really 2 layers. If you think about if you talk about the private process or the planning process for the entitlements, yes, there could be loopholes, as you said, that Mack trucks can run through. But in terms of legacy and public dollars, the URSD, which was created in 2015 by the General Assembly of North Carolina, that is a component unit of local government. So if that, and Scott mentioned, it would be the adjacent city tax equivalent to that. So that's 31 cents that could be added to that overlay district or a district within the district. And if schools and it can only go to public uses. So it could go to affordable housing, it could go to schools, it could go to public parks. It could be used as a mechanism to create synthetic TIFs for financing. So there's a lot of power that could be within that, but it is still a public entity. So it would be separate and apart from the planning board that Travis presented. It would be an advisory committee that would have the county managers, very similar to how the RTP special tax district's set up. So I think that's a distinction that may not be as clear, but it is another tool in the toolbox, and I think it will be able to be protected in terms of use of funds that are derived from that sub-district.
So thank you for that. And I know, Travis, you didn't even get a chance to get to this slide, so you're going to present it. Just if you could highlight who else has one of these.
Yes.
So
I'm
California,
happy,
because I'm looking at it on the General Assembly's website. I done went and looked at the statute, but who has one and how successful it's been when you get there?
I'm happy to run. We actually included these slides in case this came up as a discussion point. I have another topic as well if it comes up. But I'm happy to just briefly run through these to give you the full context of this. So to answer your question, Commissioner Burns, no one has one right now. And I believe, I would have to double check, but I believe the way that the legislation is structured and who's authorized, we may be the only place in North Carolina authorized to do it. I have this slide up just to recap our existing special tax districts. So we were here back, I think, in May speaking with you all about this. This is coterminous with our existing boundary. It's capped at 10-cent general tax revenue and 10-cent public transportation. Today, in FY24, we're at 8.8 on the general levy and 2.5 on public transportation. So this applies to the entire park. And again, Linda alluded to some of the structures on this. The governance of this is that there is an advisory committee that you all appoint based on recommendations from the Owners and Tenants Association. That advisory committee on an annual basis recommends what every year we spend those funds on, and then it becomes part of your budget ordinance for approval. And that advisory committee, as happened this year, asked for an increase in that tax rate, and ultimately you all have jurisdiction over what that rate is set at, and that's sort of the structure there. The URSDs are, you can think of these like sub-districts within our existing RTP tax district, and they're structured in the exact same way. So this was added to the legislation, as Linda said, about 2014 or 2015. It was actually originally envisioned to be used at HUB. That's not ultimately the direction that we decided to move in with HUB, but it is still on the books and is now a public financing mechanism available really to you all as the county to help fund some of the infrastructure and programs to support the urbanization of portions of the park. So the way that these work is essentially the landowner would come to you as a petition and say, hi, we would like you to create an urban research service district to fund services in the district. Those revenues very explicitly in the statutes can be used for debt service. So if there are significant infrastructure pieces that need to be created, the revenue from this can be used for that. All the funds must be used for the benefit of that district. So as it's drawn, whatever the public project is has to have some sort of nexus to provide that benefit to the district to use those funds. We can create there's no limit to how many of these we can create. It's just a matter of needing to create them in a defined district to be able to, again, provide those services and provide that nexus between the public and the private there. And the tax rate limitations on this are tagged to the rate of the largest neighboring municipality in that county. So for Durham County, that ties any Durham URSDs to the Durham city tax rate, and that would be the maximum rate that you could charge in this district. That current rate is 55 cents is currently the Durham city tax rate. It'll be tagged to that as that tax rate changes over time. One of the things we've thought about, too, is the need to include and consider those additional taxes that are levied on that. So RTP taxpayers pay that RTP special tax district that exists today, that rate, plus the Durham County Fire District rate for that service as well. So if you kind of pull those out, that pulls that 55 cents down if we don't want to overtax and go above on an equivalent basis what that would be. But it does provide a mechanism to generate additional revenue to provide those additional services and infrastructure for these newly developed, more dense areas of the county.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobs?
Thank you so much for this presentation, and thank you for your work on this. I mean, this is just really incredible and really, really exciting moment for all of us, really is. I feel like this is a pivotal time, not just for RTP, but our entire region. And I think you said it somewhere in the presentation that the decisions that we make now, the investments that we make now, are really going to determine our future for the next 50 years. And that's the same for RTP, but it's also the same for Durham. And so we really have this collective moment where we're doing the same thing within Durham, you know, with our comp plan, with our transit plan, but we're also doing a downtown Durham study, we're doing a cultural arts master plan, we're doing a Discover Durham tourism plan, but they're really all about the same thing. And so I really love the way that you have, you know, dove into the comprehensive land use plan and are really aligning that, because that's what we have to do. we just don't, we've got to be all moving in the same direction and working together. And I see your further slides, Travis, are about transit and how we're aligning with our transportation and transit plans. So I really want to applaud you, and I think we can really learn from each other. You know, when I looked at, you know, the comp plan and how you all are going to help to deliver on the 15-minute city or a 15-minute community, that's coming from the Durham community. So I think for me, I know you, obviously we live in a capitalistic society that is governed by the market, but we can still have the power through a lot of different mechanisms, and you have some that we don't have. We can figure out how to leverage the market to deliver on what the community wants and the vision of the community and the business owners in RTP. So you know, so it's a powerful force, and I hope as we move forward with our comprehensive plan that we do work really, really closely together, because we're going to be, the next step for us is our unified development ordinances, and you know, we can all help each other, because you're going to be doing the same thing, is how do you translate the plan into actuality. And the funding is really key. So this tool, you know, this mechanism is very important, because let's face it, we don't have enough money to do all the things that we don't have. And our hands are often very much tied at the state level. So I think the key thing, and Commissioner Burns kind of alluded to this a little bit, is going to be how we really stay true to some of the values. And I think the biggest challenge for us is around workforce housing and affordable housing. How are we really going to, from a market perspective, really make that happen? Because, again, we've got to have people who are working at all different levels in RTP able to live there, and we want to have diverse, inclusive communities. So we're going to, it's great that you're looking at national and, you know, international models for that. Just a few little things. I love, you know, we're working at 4 universities. I know you're working with Durham Tech as well. I would say let's elevate that and include Durham Tech across the board, because now what we're seeing is Durham Tech is being a linchpin. You know, we've had recent announcements with a partnership with Duke and Durham Tech with nursing and pipeline, a new announcement with North Carolina Central and Durham Tech for students. So what I see is all of our educational universities are strengthening their connection to each other. So I think we need to really recognize the key role that our community college plays in our education, our two-career pipeline. see, I want to make sure I mention. And I'm really grateful to the way that you already are using your tax district to help with some of our regional goals, with the Bikeways plan, with the Mobility Hub, and want to thank you for also partnering on the NCDOT federal application for mobility hubs as well. So fantastic. So the one point I want to make, though, is that when you look back at the vision, where the vision, retain local talent, attract global talent, groundbreaking research and development, technological discovery, the key to all of this is our talent development is our education system. We're at a crisis right now in the state where we rank 50th in per capita public education. What I'm really worried about is that I want to generate local talent. I want to get Durham residents living in 3.0 RTP and getting these great paying, fulfilling jobs. But if our state does not step up and fully fund our public education system, we are not going to be able to generate the local talent that we need for this vision. So what I would like to say, and to the RTP board members who are here in the audience, we need you to advocate and speak up to the crisis that we are having and the critical need to fund public education in the state. We cannot be at the bottom of the barrel and think that we are going to compete not just nationally but internationally. We will not be able to. And so we need the voices of our business community advocating for fully funding our schools, paying our teachers the pay that they need so that we can have the best teachers in the world, the highest paid teachers in the state here in North Carolina. That is what's going to help us drive the economic engine for RTP 3.0 and our whole region. So I just want to say that and thank you. I look forward to all of us working together.
Thank you. I'm not going to belabor at this point, but I am happy that Commissioner Jacobs brought up that the board members were here, and so y'all can advocate. So I ain't got to beat up on them. I can beat up on the rest of y'all. Wonderful. I did want to throw out two things along those lines. So we did not get to do it. I'm happy I'm vice chair now because it will be on the agenda for the joint city-county school board meeting, is the research being done by My Future NC. So we all know that they have an educational attainment goal that they have set by 2030, if I'm not mistaken, for that additional credential is 2 million more individuals having an additional credential outside of high school. And I cannot think of the number off the top of my head, but they have done an algorithm that showcases exactly how many folks we need matriculating through Durham Public Schools in order for us to meet our appropriated amount to get to that 2 million. I want to say it's over 60-some thousand, but I don't want to throw that out there and be like insanely wrong. But the number's out there and it's available on the website. Cecilia Holden's done some great work there. I only throw that out because we talk about making sure that folks can live and work here. I think our board has done a really good job of when we are trying to recruit jobs. Thank you, Andy Miracle, that we work very closely with Durham Tech. Thank you, President Buxton. And we think of really, really creative incentives to move up that percentage because we want it to be advantageous for them to hire people here. All that being said, the other thing that we're seeing, and I would hope you all would somehow figure out how to put that in your covenant, we want to see, get with Andy and some of the pie in the sky ideas that myself and Commissioner Alam have around if you hire somebody who's just as involved. It's a little bit harder when you work for a pharmaceutical company because you're a felon, don't want you on the lines. Might be different with a battery system. We're doing a better, like VinFast is here, Ken Power is here. So that's going to be a force multiplier for like who's going to be able to work on these things. And these are technical jobs that people can do with their hands. And so that's one. I do hope that we're doing that with, yes, you don't own the land, but the folks who are coming in, is this important to them? I also want to throw out their daycare. I never would have thought in my generation that daycare would become a bipartisan issue, but to God be the glory, it finally has. And so as we're bringing companies in, we're saying, you want an additional tax incentive? Are you bringing a daycare with you? Are you building one on your campus? You look across the street, the housing that we're building used to be 68 beds, it's now 86. I want to see it, and the reason why I say it's somewhat bipartisan, if you go right now to Chamber of Commerce, it's actually put out their own white paper and guiding principles on what they want to see for child care. And then you finally see, instead of using affordable housing, you see districts saying workforce housing, and we see these bills coming down. So as you all are writing this and inviting people and redeveloping these covenants, I would love to see in those incentives, are you building a daycare? Are you going to build some housing for yourself? Are you going to help our students reach their attainment goals? Are you going to partner with Durham Public Schools? Are you interested in making sure that your CEOs are in the classrooms? Speaking of a CEO in residence, I'm not going to, big hand clap for Anita Brown Graham and Carolina Cross 100. I know, you're really embarrassed. You're welcome. She saved 4,000 kids last year because she was able to bring companies into schools. And here we have these disconnected youth, opportunity youth, let me use the correct word, these 16 to 24-year-olds who are not in school, who are not working, and how can we get them reconnected back? I know that seems like a heavy lift to ask of you all, which is why I'm not asking it of you all. I'm asking it of all y'all. Like that is, we're dedicated to that. We have a model that's been proven to work. So I do hope that our business community and you wonderful folks that are sitting at this table, write that in there, because what I have found, they want to work here. They want to live here. So when you ask them, they kind of just Kanye shrug and say, yeah, we'll do it. So I just want them to, Kanye shrug and do it, and then we move on. Because these are not deal breakers for these companies that want to come in here and access our wonderful, beautiful community. And so I'm done, Commissioner Long, Chair Long.
Thank you. Thank you all so much again for this presentation. I did have a few questions just to close us out. The main thing was, you said that, currently RTP is 7,000 acres. That's the total RTP area, not just the area that the foundation owns, right? And then, okay.
Correct.
And then, so how much did RTF originally purchase when they were formed and purchased the land?
So it's a great story, and I will send you the book. But it cost $4 million to buy the land. It was done in 2 tranches because it started out in Durham County, and then Wake saw a good thing, and so it was expanded to Wake. And we couldn't get state or any other funding to raise the $4 million to buy the land. I say we, our forebears. And so they actually had to take loans out from $2 million from the residents of North Carolina, where the leaders from the Triad went around and raised $2 million. And then only after they did that was the governor willing to put in $2 million loan from the state. And so that's the unusual characteristic of our model, because if you look in most research parks, either they or the state or the university own the land, and there are ground leases, and so there's much more control. But $4 million in the 1950s was a lot of money. So hats off to the folks who creatively were able to come up with that business model, because there was no other alternative.
That's great. Yeah, if you can send me
Sure.
that book and how many acres that original $4 million got us. Because wondering, I know you mentioned that RTF doesn't own the land, you have to continuously sell the land, so how much of that acreage is still left within RTF's holding? Do we know? Or
Linda might know.
It's about 400 acres or so, ish.
And that includes the 100 of Hub, right?
No, that
No,
would
it
be
doesn't
part.
include Hub,
Those
but
are sites that are available.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then I'm glad Commissioner Carter, and I'm sure other colleagues are on the same wavelength. The same first thing I was thinking, I was like, loopholes, inclusionary zoning loopholes. I kid, but also it made me wonder if Durham County can govern under covenants, get more loopholes about land. But I see our attorney already knew where I was headed there. But to the conversation of the covenants of when it comes to selling the land, are you going to have those guidelines for what the preferences are for before selling the land pre-written, or are they going to kind of be case by case on different parcels of land?
So this would apply to already sold land, essentially. So the proposal would be to rewrite the covenants to create these new structures to establish those requirements. Our goal is to have them be as predictable as possible. So if you want to redevelop X number of acres and you want to do a mixed-use campus, that triggers these specific set of requirements. We're working out exactly how to do that and what those thresholds should be. And we also want to acknowledge that in some cases, the park has some very unique topography, and development over time has led to some unique characteristics. So there may be cases where we do need some mechanism to allow exceptions to that. So we're trying to figure out what's the right level to set them at. But our goal would be to have predictable standards that can be met by a developer to say, okay, I need to provide these things, here's how I'm going to meet them, and then, the work of the planning board would be to just verify that those plans are in place and legally we have the structures needed to enforce them.
Okay. Yeah, that's really great to hear, because as Commissioner Burns was, Vice Chair Burns was saying, if you guys aren't here, tomorrow, you guys hopefully don't leave to brighter pastures, because these are the best pastures of RTP.
Well, we also want to be very thoughtful about this, and because we don't want to kill the golden goose. So there are 375 companies in RTP. There are about 200 parcels altogether. And RTP thrives because companies see the advantage of being in RTP and want to have corporate R&D campuses. And Apple validated, that recently, so that model is still effective. So, to Travis's point, this plan will not be successful if RTP just becomes everywhere else triangle. So that's also a challenge that we want to make sure that those companies thrive and have opportunities to expand and grow within RTP, and they're incentivized to do that under 3.0. So it's both of those. We want yes and on that.
Well, thank you. And then my last point is more so a point than a question, is just around one thing that was really concerning and shocking to me was concerning of just like the vastness of it, of you were mentioning that over 1,000 acres of RTP is just parking lots, and that we're expected to reach 1 million people in just RTP within the next 20 years. So like that transit conversation, I'm glad you have that in the additional materials. I think that I would like to see that become more at the forefront of these conversations, especially I see Ellen Beckman, our transit director, is here, making sure that she's in the loop of how do we make sure that we're being sustainable with the growth of, keeping up with the growth of our transit plans too, because I don't want to see another 1,000 acres going towards parking lots in the park.
We agree.
Yeah. Thank you all so much again.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
So that brings us to our break. We have the ARPA discussion next. How does the board feel about working lunch? Or if we just want to go through this presentation?
I think we could just keep going since we're doing good on the time.
I think it's good. Yeah. Okay. That is good with me. Deputy County Manager Hager, birthday girl, if you want to come up, with John Kiefer, our grants administrator, and Alla Hargrove, management analyst.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you.
This will be a high-level conversation, and we'll move through pretty expeditiously. expeditiously. One of my birthday presents to myself. No, I'm just messing. No, but this is our usual update to the board, and we'll have conversations in upcoming meetings as we get almost to the finish line. We'll give some quick funding recaps, some status updates on projects, and talk about some upcoming allocations, conversations with the board, and then next steps. I always show this slide, the initial framework and areas in which the funding categories occurred, and we have touched almost all of the different places, and we are, as you know, moving closer to having all the dollars either encumbered or bringing forth that budget for the particular items. The guidelines, as you know, happened early 2021. The board then came up with some guiding principles, which ultimately became a plan and a framework, which we've been working for the last since May of 2022. And so that framework set areas of priority based on your adopted strategic plan. And as we shared at that time, it was a living document. And as we've evolved, as other dollars have been allocated from the state and the federal government, there have been shifts. And as we have partnered more with our city of Durham, we've also made other realignments, and we will present a document that shows those realignments in an upcoming meeting. At that time, we also, as a reminder, set aside some dollars potentially that we may need for priorities as we worked the plan. The federal rules and how they allow spending levels can be a little bit more rigid at times, and so we knew in developing this work, we wanted a path just in case we needed to shift and pivot. And that's what we've been doing along the journey. As you know, we've done some projects funded with local dollars, some funded with ARPA, and we've shifted as accordingly. We've actually have 2 nonprofits that we want to move to local dollars just because of the rigidness of how the federal dollars are, and we'll bring that to the board in another meeting. But we are grateful for the board supporting staff's recommendation in this space, and I can say we have a lot to be really proud about. We have 68% of our funds encumbered or committed as to date, although there's a plan for all of it. I know folks may see the gap and they say, oh, when can I apply for a new round? And the board's already set some priorities, and so we do have some additional RFPs, but they are for some targeted areas. We shared with you in September some targets, and as we continue working the nuances of things, sometimes we shift, and we had some targets for instance, the interlocal agreement, thought we could bring that to you by now, as well as some of our RFPs related to the affordable housing. So we're shifting a couple of months. Will not cause a problem, but we are in the 3-year calendar time frame. So we have about almost 1,100 days left. For those who may be counting, but we're well on our way to meeting our target of trying to have all of the dollars encumbered, which means that you have a contract for it when it's applicable, and so the efforts that the board have done over the last couple of months, the big one with the water sewer RFP, anytime you do infrastructure types of projects, those are more cumbersome and more inclined to cause a little bit more challenge as you get to the end of project completion. But with all of the projects, our intent is to finalize them by well ahead of the deadline. This is a reading test to see how your eyes work, but no, I'm just messing. This just shows a summary of what's also in your document. There's a document that captures all of the projects that we have to date. We're up to 55 projects right now, and there are many on the way to. We have about 10 plus that we'll be finalizing. The nonprofit community grants, all of those are for a 24-month period, and they're staggered. We're spending quite a bit of time making sure that they're successful in their implementation. For some of you who serve on boards, such as with DSS or public health, you're quite familiar with the single audit process, which is very involved. The nonprofits have to go through the same process, so we are trying to make sure that they're ready for those types of reviews. And as we talk about in January, the structure that we need to expand in our shop to help with that work, we will explain more what that will look like. Again, our goal is to make sure all the dollars on the back end of this are accepted as appropriate, but that means that your front end continues to be correct. Remaining ARPA projects are targeted to end by September 2026, and that first slide says, with the community grants, they should finish by 2025 because they're for 2 years. The remaining would finish by 2026 of September. And again, about the compliance infrastructure. Some quick updates on impending items that will come before you soon. We have one impending RFP related to business community support. I'll talk a little bit more about that. That RFP happened back in October timeframe, and we actually will recommend some nonprofits related to that at your next board meeting. There are some areas related to housing security, and again, as I shared, we've vetted further about funding levels and as well as focus areas and have refined the list slightly. And we will pull those triggers definitely in January, and we feel comfortable about the time frame with us having the 3-year period. The broadband uplates and realignments, we continue to work with the state on the partnerships there, and the ILAs related to the arts area as well as digital investment will come forth to the board in 2024. And that last bullet says grants administration, but it's also encompassing of other areas related to ARPA, and we'll also have a discussion about that in 2024. And that's the compliance component or contract administration. It is involved, and we just want to make sure through 2026 we have a clear plan of how that works. This is an area we've not talked as much about, and we'll spend some time in January talking further. It's those areas that we had planned early on in the plan with set-asides for, or we've allocated dollars within the budget. For an example, we allocated money for public school health nurses, and those dollars have been set aside for that. We've not expended it because the dollars, the positions have not been filled. Recent changes in legislation may allow for us to have success with positions getting filled faster. There was but we'll have some conversation about that in January. There are a few other items that we had set aside for related to transitional housing, DCO on the go. That is one that we right now have paid with local funds, but we did show potentially as ARPA funds, and it was a vehicle that I think it was 2 years or 3. 2 years for actual production and outfitting. So the next one is there was a set aside also for pre-K expansion. We've been funding pre-K for throughout over the past several years with local dollars. And this revenue replacement category is one that we funded for projects that, not necessarily just for revenue replacement, but the rules allow for flexible use of ARPA funds for anything that the local government does, but you don't have to have the stringent federal rules as it relates to grant management. And then there's an amount that's showing that we've not allocated. And so we'll spend more time at the January meeting on this area. We have some more work to do to make sure that we can flesh out what some of the details are, but wanted to remind you of these areas as we think about the final steps with funding. I know that there are places that the board has also asked us to revisit as potential fund use, such as eviction or diversion or other places, but we wanted to put this list there. So real quickly, that shows the sort of where we are, and within the next 2 months, we expect pretty much most of the dollars to be committed or in an encumbered state. As far as next steps, as I mentioned, we did have the Small Business Support RFP. It went out on October 11th. And the intent was for the applicants to establish and maintain an entrepreneurial support system for small business owners impacted by COVID, as well as provide targeted small business support for qualifying small businesses. And again, that will tentatively come to the board on the 12th. And the digital equity one, we've talked about this before. It is the $735,000, and this has been a timing issue. The city is helping to take lead on this particular one, and they've recently hired the staff member that will guide this process, and we will partner with them, but it's just been a timing issue because we've just not brought it to the board. And then lastly, the cultural arts funding. This has evolved over the past year or so. We were to partner with the Arts Council. There is an effort by the city to coordinate what this looks like. As I mentioned earlier, the nonprofit having to do the same sub-recipient grant management, which is very involved, has caused the city to sort of pivot somewhat in how they've done the partnership role. There is an intent to use the dollars for projects that are near some of the development in the Hayti development that's happening on Fayetteville, and some of the dollars will be managed by one of the nonprofit communities partners. And so I'm broad because I'm waiting for some clarification, but it's been a lot trying to finish up what that looks like. And so this has evolved a lot, but we're trying to make sure before we bring it to the elected bodies is something that will be seamless on the back end because of the complexities of it. So as far as next steps, we will have some recommendations for the board for your December 11th meeting. We will send some information out this week, similar to what we did with the nonprofit community grants. We'll share the folder with the proposals and the recommendations. And then we'll have ongoing recommendations at the January 24th work session. I can entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Deputy County Manager Hager.
Thank you.
Pass it to Commissioner Jacobs.
Thank you so much, and happy birthday. First of all, I mean, it's incredible to think that with your leadership, we have 53 projects under contract for a total of $42.2 million. So let's
all of us.
celebrate that milestone.
It's all of us.
It's fantastic. And I know we've asked for this before, but the list of that list, there's that whole hard to read chart. I really would love to see some way that we can really push that out to give it the credit that it's due. I mean, not just all of the work that has gone into that and all the different things that are being funded. I know it may be, very detailed, but I still feel like we haven't really celebrated that enough. And so I hope that we can do that.
Can we allow DCM Hager? That's actually in the works. I don't know if we're ready to put it out, but it's
okay.
It's
Yes, ma'am.
Good.
And part of that, Commissioner Jacobs, we showed some of the changes to the website, and so there is a lot underway, and we will do a more aggressive campaign of look at us and what the board has supported and what the community is doing. We're starting, there's a lot of vetting that goes before we start tooting horns on some of our partners, but you're absolutely right, we do.
Yeah, and not just the tooting the horn, but actually just getting the information out to the community that these are all of the programs that are being funded and supported, and even if it was just like a one-pager or a report to the community on ARPA, the status of the ARPA funding, even just like a written, readable report. So that was one. I did want to get more information about the category that said planning and infrastructure to support home security efforts for $2 million, because as you know, we've had lots of conversations. I'm really concerned to make sure that we do something around a day center, which is a really critical need in our community, some type of a day center to support the whole, our infrastructure around homelessness and support services and that whole corridor that we have with the 300 and project, the library, urban ministries, all of our investments. So that was one thing I wanted to hear more about. And second of all, glad to see the reference to the RFP related to land trust, housing repair, fantastic. But the other big need that had come to my attention was for reentry housing for women, specifically. And I'm glad to see the money going towards the rehab for our existing reentry. But so those were the two things I wanted to follow up on.
So, and now let me go to that list. One of the items that Commissioner Jacobs referenced was the planning and infrastructure funds to support home security efforts. There's $2 million there, and this is one that we will come to the board in January with further information. There is a joint city-county conversation about our homeless and housing security efforts this month, and we wanted to hear that discussion as well as get further feedback and have additional dialogue before we move forward with the RFP. And I'll let the manager share further, or that's okay.
That is correct. So we didn't want to make any type of commitment or proposals until we got to hear from the committee and the boards that are working on those homelessness initiatives.
Okay. So I would also encourage checking in with Roshana Parker with our Justice Services as well, because specifically the need for reentry housing for women is another critical need that I've heard over and over again.
Will do.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. But again, thank you so much. This is really, good birthday present for you.
Yes.
It's a huge achievement to get to this point. And again, I want to thank you.
And lots of teamwork. It's like I said, I'm the face, but it's hundreds of folks helping in this process.
Commissioner Jacobs, Commissioner Vice Chair Burns.
It's okay. It's a new day. It's a new day. I do want to go back. One, congratulations on 68% of this money being encumbered properly. Like, that is what I want to, echo for everyone, because we did take the time to do the review and wait for the final rule to come out. And there are counties from not just Murphy to Manio, but Murphy to LA County and Maine to Florida to Miami, who didn't take the time to do it right. And so, one, I don't just want to congratulate us on spending. I want to congratulate us on a process, equitable process, and a lot of man hours. I do want to uplift the $850,000 for grants administration. I really wish we could almost do that like volunteer hours and quantify them, because I know that there was a lot more sweat equity put in by multiple staffers across multiple departments. And so we know that that's minuscule. Like when you think about it in comparison to $62 million, that is a very small amount. So I hope no one, outside gets sticker shock, because that's not even 10% administrative costs. So, that's number one. I did want to throw out a couple of things. One, we are starting a little bit behind what some of the potential timelines might have been for some of the nonprofits, potentially, because they applied. I want to know, one, everyone signed. Do you get a sense from our nonprofits that they feel good about starting now, moving up their timeline, and being able to do the work that they might have requested to do previously?
That's a great question. So what we're doing as we finalize contracts, we revisit scope of work.
Right.
Okay. They have 24 months regardless of the start time. So although, let's say last year, this time, we identified our partners, over this past 12 months, we've refined what their targets will be, what their outcomes will be. And we're also refining that even though we've finalized the contract, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so this is a iterative process. I'm laughing because it's many of us involved, and so although some may be a little disappointed it didn't happen sooner, as they're now getting into the process of implementation and reporting and everything, they can appreciate our pace. So I will say, to your point, there may have been a little bit of disappointment. It was taking longer at first, but
we wanted to do it right.
We wanted to do it right, but I have not heard any.
No, that's helpful.
Yeah.
And the reason why I throw that out, the other thing, I think we were very creative in the framework, the equitable framework that you and your staff developed, in making sure that, yes, there are going to be some really bright, shiny nonprofits that are going to come through with these awesome proposals, but we're also going to have some folks who really do great work in the community and might not necessarily be in a position to do every bit of paperwork that we need. Like, again, you pointed out that single audit, being able to report this back at the Treasury. I just want to ask, because as much as we're like, oh, exhale today, this is where the hard work starts.
This is the hard work.
I get the reporting starts now, because so these people who are used to just going out and doing the good work, the hard work, now have to look at me and you with our glasses every couple of months and come back with this was our outcome, this was our measurement. And so are we, or have we decided, because I want people to be successful, are we in a position, and I don't know, that might be a staffing thing, to kind of sort of check in with folks and say, okay, listen, this is the way this should be laid out, and are we doing our part to do a little bit more hand holding, not for everybody, but those that really need it, but we see, gosh, your outcomes are great, but gosh, this paperwork needs prayer. So, I've been there.
I had my finger on the button waiting for you to finish, because I will say I really appreciate DCM Hager's tact in how she answered your question.
Right.
This has been a very labor-intensive process, and DCM Hager and our staff have had to become right indignant with some of the processes, I would say.
I'm with you.
And so where we have some community partners that were, well structured and the infrastructure was there to support it, they have literally had to hold hands.
Yeah.
And you all will hear behind the scenes, we probably will switch the funding source.
Right.
Because we are afraid that some of
it'll hit that treasury ceiling and
get
hit right back down.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
and that's not a bad thing.
It's not. It's not.
And so it is, but it is and that's why when we talk about, and for me, I always hate to go back to the past, but my first job was with the Smart Start Initiative, North Carolina Partnership for Children, and I worked with the nonprofits, and I had not seen so much red in my life from auditors, the state auditors, but it taught me so much about the difference with nonprofits and their structure versus government. But that administrative side, many of them have not had to report at this level. And so, as the manager has said, this has been labor intensive, which we knew going into it. But we also want to build this capacity so that they can then compete for dollars outside of what they're getting now, and so they'll be stronger when they get on the other side of it. So
that's right.
That's what we want.
That's
what the board was committed to do. And so when we come to you in January, we'll be able to say, well, based on our experience, this is what we're seeing. We meet with the manager weekly for about 30 minutes. We give her updates on where we are on all of these projects, the ones that elevate for that particular week, that whether it's the ILA with the city or where we may need to shift. And it's, again, from grant funds to local funds, not a bad thing, but our compliance team and finance can't thank them enough for what they do. They have that same lens and experience. We're looking for the potential pitfall, and we don't want anyone to have a situation that's a negative thing.
And I can wait because I want to take time for my colleagues, but I did have two more. And if you have to follow up with me, I understand. One's kind of an easy yes or no. So I'm excited about the grants, the repair for our seniors. And I know you said we're going to talk about that in January. I'm just wondering, that is an RFP for what? The RFP is for services. The RFP is to see if we can feasibly start to do additional work. That's the first question. And then question number two, I know the cultural resource plan at $2 million. I know you said the city might take lead, but even if they take, will they be administering, or will it be the Arts Council, boom, boom, boom? Those are my two questions, if we know them.
So with to expand the housing repair programs, we would do an RFP to identify entities, nonprofits that could help facilitate that work.
Okay, that's that.
Yes, this is labor intensive, and we had a small grant in this before, and so we're trying to figure out the best way to do it that is not so labor intensive.
No, and I'm excited because I remember folks will ask me, and I can think in rural, I know who you need to call at USDA. In certain census tracts, I remember me and Rod Jenkins were having this conversation. So I'm just excited about it. That's why I asked. Sure. And then the other one, who might administer that $2 million?
That is the city.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect.
We will give them all that. We're grateful that they're willing to partner with us in that way.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Vice Chair Burns. Commissioner Carter, do you have questions?
Yes, just a couple comments or maybe one question. First, Claudia, thanks so much for being so careful and how you've led us through the whole entire ARPA process from the beginning to, I guess we're in the middle now. We're not at the end yet, right? We're more in the middle. But every time you present, it's reemphasized for us how labor intensive this is and the reporting requirements and just the onus it's put on our staff to be able to get this money out the door, and especially with the large number of projects that there are. So we all really appreciate it, and I feel very supportive of I really appreciate the update and feel very supportive of all the areas that are sort of highlighted for future funding. And I would just say, in particular, the one on home security, the one we're calling the home security efforts, that I agree with Wendy about, the need for improved infrastructure and services here in Durham around day services for people who are unhoused, and also additional ways to serve people who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness and who may not be going to our shelter. And there are a lot of those. Every month we get a report at the HSAC, and the numbers are increasing every single month, and they're in the 40s, 50s, the number of unsheltered homeless individuals and families, and it's just alarming. Recently someone sent me an article about a new effort in Greensboro where they have these units that are called pallets, and I'm not sure whether or not I'm not sure how much, infrastructure other than a bed and shelter are in these pallets, but it just seemed like a really creative approach to getting 50 people off the street, and I feel like we should just explore that a little. And I was going to bring it up at the HSAC meeting as well, but I thought I'd throw it out now. And then I wanted to ask one specific question about the funding for the arts, the ILA with the city for investment in the arts, because they just put out a press release about how they're moving forward with their $1 million already. And they've got this press release out, and how they're really focusing on equity in what art, who will receive these grants, and they're focused on racial equity in particular, and they're working with the Haiti and St. Joseph's Historic Foundation around that, and in order to build minority-owned businesses that are arts and culture-oriented. And so I'm just eager for us to jump on board. It just seems like that one already has an administrative process underway, and so hopefully we'll be joining soon.
Yes, ma'am. I'm hopeful as well. We've been talking about this one for some time, and I received those remarks, and I'm excited as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter, and I'm glad you put an emphasis on our neighbors that are facing housing insecurity. And to your point, I think in Austin, when we were at NACO, there was actually a couple of groups there that were presenting their models that they had been building of communities like that. And I think Commissioner Jacobs actually was able to go on a tour where they went and they were building this model of not just providing housing, but trying to provide permanent housing, of a path to home ownership, a path to sustainable livelihood for residents. And I definitely want to see how we can definitely be having more conversations about that. And as we know, our urban ministries here in Durham is over capacity and doesn't have the space and for the growing population that we have of individuals who are facing housing insecurity. So being able to not just have a conversation about how do we provide temporary services and resources, but how do we have that path forward? Because also at our last joints, I believe it was our last joint city-county, or maybe the one before that, Councilmember Freeman also addressed about the eviction aversion program, how we're providing individuals checks to help basically push down the line the inevitable. That it's a helpful program. It's something we are glad we're able to support, but there is going to be a cliff once we run out of federal funding for that eviction diversion money. And so how are we looking at it long term of, these are individuals, these are our neighbors, these are individuals that are working multiple jobs and still struggling with the increasing housing costs. So what type of long-term permanent solutions are we looking at? Thanks for raising that, Commissioner Carter. Thank you so much, Deputy County Manager Hager. I'm really excited, and congratulations for the way you've handled and brought forward and managed this entire process, because I know in the beginning we didn't even have all of the full guidelines of how the money could be spent. So you've navigated this really wonderfully, and I'm excited.
Thank you so much.
Okay. With that, we move to commissioner comments. I'll start over if we see anyone with hands first.
Commissioner Carter, your favorite agenda item?
I'd just say I'm filled with a lot of hope for our future working together. We, this current board, we have a whole year, right, to work together on how to improve funding at the state level for our schools and what more we can do here. How we can be sure we're providing the supports that our youngest children and our families need, how we can get people into great jobs, a lot of things we've been discussing today, being sure our social safety net is as strong as it can be. And I'm filled with hope, not because I'm necessarily optimistic. I feel like I've been working on these problems for 19 years, and we're still working on the exact same problems, and some steps forward, some steps backwards. But I'm filled with hope because hope is, is some sort of sentiment that we have inside of ourselves that's not really related to external circumstances in our community or in our world. It's just based on working towards what's good and what's right, and I'm glad that I share that with all of you and that we're working on it together.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter. Commissioner Jacobs?
Thank you for those words, Commissioner Carter. Absolutely, and we are going to do our best to make sure that your last year in office after 20 years of service to our community is a great one. I just wanted to follow up two things. One is related to what you just spoke about, Chair Alam, is the Familiar Faces Initiative, the Durham Familiar Faces Initiative. One of the 3 subcommittees is supportive housing. And so folks from Housing for New Hope and the city, it's a real collaborative effort. All of that, they are looking at what are all the different types of housing we need. So, it could be pop-up, like transitional, real, because people are doing this. They're doing these platform types of tents, tiny homes that you can just do on a parking lot with shared facilities. I mean, nationally, there are all kinds of innovative models out there. And frankly, people are wanting to come to Durham and do them. So looking at all the different types of supportive housing that we need for our system of care so I just want to let you know that folks are working on that. And the only other thing I wanted to share was I went to the first meeting last Wednesday in Burke County for the NCAC Presidential Initiative. It's called One More Thing, and it's focused on how we reduce overdose. And I feel really excited and very honored to be one of 9 elected officials, 9 county commissioners, and frankly, I believe there are only 2 of us from urban counties. And so sitting around the table and hearing county commissioners speaking from rural counties all over our state, and especially every single person has a personal story. County commissioners who, we all have addiction in our families, but heartbreaking loss, personal loss of children and family members from elected officials across our state. And it's bringing us all together, because this, addiction is a disease that it doesn't know any boundaries of class, race, party affiliation. And so we really are at a great moment where we have Medicaid expansion happening at the same time that we have this opioid funding. So the nexus of the 2 of those really, really give us an opportunity. And this committee is really looking at what are we all experiencing right now when we're trying to implement MAT and using Narcan, and what is really happening, and what are some of the barriers that we can collectively look at with the power of NCACC at the state level to try collectively to address, and I'll just share with you, out of the conversations that we each brought, and there were also a lot of staff expertise at this meeting. Number one is, how do we address the stigma? How do we address the stigma around, mental illness, substance use, addiction, and getting into treatment? It is, when I talked to our staff here before I went to the meeting, we have all these resources right now. We can offer people in the field to start treatment. Our staff, paramedics, people in public health, they are following up with people and saying, hey, we want to help you, peer support specialists. And it's still really challenging. And so what I heard, when I listened to our staff who were in the field, they said they felt like the biggest issue is still the stigma. And also the rising disparity racially. Our overdose rate in Durham County is now 60% in the Black community. And it's over 60% now in the Black community, and it's around 30% in the white community. That, when I started doing this work 6 years ago, as the co-chair of Durham joins together, it was the reverse. And that has now flipped. And again, what I'm hearing is again around this, we hear it over and over again. So how do we actually address this and the root causes? Because we have to figure out how to be able to do that. And the second thing I want to share was just, I'm thinking of systemic issues that we can help with at the state level. Related to access to services at MAT is around insurance. Some companies, some insurance may only say, they'll cover a few months. Well, that's not enough. Some people may need to be in treatment for years. Some people, it may be their whole life. So, and then it's also with providers, because in many rural counties, the first point of contact could be a primary care provider. And there's even stigma within providers related to MAT, that they don't see it as something as basic as providing insulin to somebody who's a diabetic, or heart medicine. So I look forward to sharing more with you, because it's going to impact our work here in Durham County. And I'm also taking forward all the things that we've learned here and sharing that as well. So just wanted to share that update.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs. Vice Chair Burns?
Mine is really quick. I do hate we didn't get to finish it. I usually have a lot, but I'm kind of sad, and I hope you all can join me in this. Tonight is Mayor Elaine O'Neill's last night as mayor, and I was hoping that we could do a proclamation as all-women board, but we do not have everyone here for a signature. And so at a future date, because as we all know, she is betrothed and will be going to get married. So I don't know when she will be able to come back, but I hope you all will join with me in signing a proclamation on her historic election and her departure. I thought we would be able to suspend the rules today and be able to do it, but we're not. But that's the only request that I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Burns. Thank you again, everyone. And I just want to echo the sentiments Commissioner Carter shared. I'm really excited and looking forward to this next year of all the things that we're going to be able to grow, that we've already started to build up on, and all of the new initiatives that we're going to bring forward. And I look forward to chairing as we move forward. So thank you all so much. And with that, I adjourn my first meeting as chair. And we'll pass it, yeah. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Are we doing? Monica? Wait, Monica came.
Yeah, do I forget? Do we have to do that?
Okay.
You don't have to.
Okay, we don't have to. Okay.
We do have a meeting right now, though.
Yeah,
We have a meeting.
I know we have a meeting. Okay. Monica, what would you prefer? Okay, we'll adjourn. Thank you.
We have agenda prep directly after this meeting, so all attendees, you can grab your lunch and come right back in.